Chapter 8:16. From the beginning to the end, Rin and Osaka, Saber, and Ryder were just watching coldly from the side. They didn't care about the life and death of Dirty Inkstone at all. To Saber, an evil demon like the Dirty Inkstone of Enchanting was a target that had to be eradicated. Even if Noah wanted to let the Dirty Inkstone of Enchanting go, Saber would not agree. For Ryder, no matter who it was, except for Noah, she wouldn't waver even if they died, including Rin and Osaka and Saber. After all, Ryder was the snake demon Medusa in Greek mythology. She had killed countless people, and her hands were already stained with blood. She wouldn't be shaken by this. As for Rin and Osaka, there was no need to talk about him. Although he never admitted it, Rin and Osaka was definitely Rin and Osaka's sister. His sister was treated like that by Dirty Inkstone, and before she died, he even said that he treated Osaka like a toy. How could Rin and Osaka forgive Dirty Inkstone? Therefore, no one would feel pity for someone as evil as Dirty Inkstone, even if he died, and no one would try to save his rotten life. Compared to Shinji and Osaka, Dirty Inkstone deserved to die more. After crushing the inkstone into pieces, Noah threw away the blood-stained cloth wrapped around his hand and shook his hand. This old bug is more disgusting than I thought. House and Osaka has always used insects as a means of fighting. Their magic research is also in this direction. Rin and Osaka said expressionlessly. Although in terms of magic history, House and Osaka has a longer history than House and Osaka, but personally, this kind of magic, I respectfully decline. Even that kind of magic comes from the power of the source? Noah raised his head and looked at the position of the hole of the Holy Grail, that had disappeared, and suddenly asked. Hey, and Osaka, since the problem of the small Holy Grail is solved, what about the Great Holy Grail? The small Holy Grail was used to store the servant's soul to open the hole that led to the source. The Great Holy Grail, on the other hand, was used to absorb the magic power of the ley line, which was used to run the entire ritual of the Holy Grail War. In the end, it would use the magic power absorbed from the ley line to fix the hole. Compared to the Little Holy Grail, the Great Holy Grail was the true system of the Holy Grail War. As long as the Great Holy Grail existed, magicians who had designs on the Great Holy Grail could continue to create the Little Holy Grail. When the Great Holy Grail accumulated enough magic power, they could continue to launch the Holy Grail War. Because of all the evil in this world, this Great Holy Grail has long been contaminated, Noah said. If the Great Holy Grail is not dealt with, then all the evil in this world will continue to descend upon this world sooner or later. I know. Rin Enben nodded solemnly. Now, let's go and destroy the Great Holy Grail. Everyone present nodded in agreement. Coincidentally, the Great Holy Grail of Fuyuki City is under the Ludong Temple of the Yuanzang Mountain. According to Rin Enben, there was a huge hole in the Yuzang Mountain. That big hole was the center of the entire Fuyuki City. Therefore, the Great Holy Grail was in that big hole. Under Rin Enben's lead, Noah and the others entered the Yuzang Mountain. After passing through a cave, they entered the big hole. The big hole was very spacious, as if it was specially made by someone. After entering the big hole, Noah and the others quickly saw a rock slab that looked like a cliff. It was a rock slab that was faintly emitting light. Looking at the rock slab, Saber and Ryder's expressions were quite dignified. Presumably, these two servants felt the abnormality in the air, right? What a twisted magic residue, it's like poisonous gas from a poison jar. Rin Enben also seemed to feel something and closely looked at the rock slab. There's no need to think about where the Great Holy Grail is. Noah nodded and led the girls to climb up the rock slab. In the center of the rock slab, there was a huge hole. Standing at the edge of the crater, Noah, Rin Anaka, Saber, and Ryder looked down, taking in everything that was happening in the crater. Rumble, immediately, a bubbling sound like boiling water slowly rang out. It was a large pool of black mud that was like a lake, but it was rolling like lava. There's still some left? Rin Enben was surprised. I thought there was nothing left. No, there's nothing left to flow outside. Saber shook her head. That mud was originally the magic power of the cursed Great Holy Grail. When it was used to fix the hole on the outside, it flowed out from the hole. However, because the mud was reduced to a level where it wasn't enough to fix the hole disappeared, and the remaining mud flowed out from the Great Holy Grail. But, this amount is still shocking. Even Ryder rarely spoke. Even if there aren't billions of curses inside, there are definitely hundreds of thousands. If it's leaked out, the residents of Fuyuki City won't be spared, right? Noah didn't participate in the girls' conversation. Because, Noah's eyes were attracted by something at the bottom of the swamp-like black mud. That was something that only Noah could see. Wang. Amidst the tremors that no one could detect, the feathers that were emitting a pure white radiance and missing half sank into the bottom of the black quagmire. It was like a lotus flower that had emerged from the mud without being tainted. Even though it was surrounded by filthy black mud, it was still pure white like snow. Of course. Even if it was a curse that could kill all humans, it still couldn't affect the incomplete feather. The reason was that, even if the feather was incomplete, it was still a part of a world. World fragment. Finally, I found you. Noah didn't hesitate and jumped into the big hole full of black mud. Noah, master. Rin and Osaka, Saber, and Ryder were all startled by his sudden outburst. Splash. Amidst the splashing sound, Noah sank straight into the lake-like, pitch-black quagmire and sank to the bottom. Walala. The black mud that was rolling like magma started to boil. Like a whirlpool, it suddenly started to rotate with the spot where Noah was immersed in as the center. In this situation, the black mud that turned into a swamp disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. No way. Rin and Osaka was speechless. He's going to absorb those curses again? What's that guy made of? Even Saber and Ryder didn't know what to say, let alone Rin and Osaka. Billions of curses. Others didn't even have time to hide, but Noah not only took the initiative to jump in, but also absorbed those curses. The group of girls really didn't know how Noah was able to absorb those curses and still be fine. In the end, it was Saber who spoke. What an incredible man. As he spoke, the water level of the black mud continued to drop until it reached the bottom. Then, it turned into a stream of mud that swept into Noah's body, who was standing in the middle of the huge pit, and disappeared completely. In the end, the remaining black mud was all removed by Noah's physique and turned into pure magic power, which Noah stored in his magic power source. Noah then jumped onto the rock platform. Saber. Rin and Osaka immediately called out. Saber nodded and took a step forward. Peng dash. In Saber's hand, the golden sacred sword suddenly exploded with a bright flame that covered the entire sword. Around it, strands of star-like golden light formed a stream of light that began to rise and converge towards the sacred sword in Saber's hand. Saber raised the sacred sword that was enveloped in golden flames above her head. Excalibur. When the real name of the strongest sacred sword on the ground was released, the sacred relic that was on a completely different level from the sacred relic released a dazzling golden light. The golden light turned into a stream of light, like a light pillar that descended from the sky, and fell into the big hole. Dong! The Yuanzhong mountain shook and rose. Chapter 8:17. Fuyuki City, and Osaka's house. Noah, Rin and Osaka, Tosakura, and Ilya were sitting on the sofa, looking at Saber and Ryder standing in the middle of the hall. They looked at each other. There, Saber and Ryder were standing side by side. Both of them wore troubled expressions and appeared to be very uncomfortable. Especially Saber, it seemed that she couldn't bear it. I don't think it's polite to keep staring at others. On the side, although Ryder didn't say anything, it meant that he agreed. Obviously, even Ryder felt a little embarrassed. That's natural. Because, whether it was Saber or Ryder, today, they didn't wear their usual clothes. Taking a closer look, Saber was wearing a gothic dress. It was completely black, and the edges of the dress had a lot of laces. It matched Saber's slender and petite figure, and it was very cute. Ryder, on the other hand, was wearing a white shirt and a pair of jeans. He looked more or less androgynous, but he had the mature temperament of an office lady. Compared to Saber, he was beautiful in a different sense. Ryder's blindfold was removed as well, revealing a stunning and exquisite face without missing a single detail. In Greek legends, some people believed that the reason why Medusa, as a goddess, was cursed by Athena and became a snake demon was because Medusa had a beauty that even Athena couldn't reach, causing Athena to be jealous. Whether this legend is true or not, Noah didn't know. However, if this legend is true, then Noah will never doubt it. Because Ryder does have a beauty that even a goddess can't reach. Unfortunately, Ryder's face was covered by a pair of glasses, which more or less covered her otherworldly beauty. However, this can't be helped. Ryder's petrifying magic eye will petrify anyone it looks at. If Ryder can control her magic eye, then it's fine, but the key is that Ryder can't control her magic eye at all. That's why Ryder usually wears an eye mask. Right now, Ryder was wearing that pair of glasses in order to control his magic eye. Noah didn't know whether it was because ordinary glasses could have such an effect or because the glasses were specially made. Noah only knew that compared to wearing a blindfold, Ryder with glasses was undoubtedly more suitable. One is adorable. A beauty. As the servants of Saber and Ryder, the two girls were standing there in casual clothes. No matter who it was, they would be astonished by such a sight. Noah and the others looked at each other, not because Saber and Ryder looked weird in their casual clothes. It was the exact opposite. Everyone felt that it was too suitable. Ling, Ilya said, as if she couldn't take it anymore. We're buying casual clothes for Saber and Ryder so that they won't attract too much attention, right? The implication of Ilya's words was clear. Even though they were in casual clothes, with Saber and Ryder's looks, even if they were not fully armed, they would still attract attention. Was this the so-called natural beauty? Really? Ilya sighed. Isn't this not a problem? What can we do? Rin and Osaka refuted. Saber and Ryder's quality is too good. If they wear ugly clothes, I won't be able to stand it. Kiran didn't say anything, but she nodded on the side, obviously agreeing with Rin and Osaka's words. Well, this is not bad. If they're beautiful, then there's no need to deliberately hide it. Noah shrugged. Just don't let Saber and Ryder run around in full armor. That would not only attract attention, but it would also be very strange. Our goal is not to let Saber and Ryder not attract attention, but to make sure that they don't behave too strangely so that they won't cause any trouble in the future. That's true. Ilya glanced at the restless Saber and Ryder. She rested her chin on her hand and smiled happily. However, I didn't expect Saber and Ryder to be able to live in this era. This is really surprising. Hearing this, not only Noah, Rin and Osaka, Kiran and Osaka, but also Saber and Ryder were a bit surprised. Heroic spirits were heroes with great achievements in life, and after death, rose to become existences that surpassed humans. Through rituals, heroic spirits could be summoned to every era. However, only the world could summon the heroic spirit's true body. As for the heroic spirits that humans and other existences summoned through rituals and treated as targets to be enslaved, they borrowed the intelligence of the heroic spirit's soul from the original body of the heroic spirit to create a clone, which was a servant. Originally, summoning a servant was a big ritual that humans couldn't do, and most of them could only do something similar to spirit summoning or reliance. They could only use a small part of the heroic spirit's power to create miracles. Even if there were some humans with amazing magic skills who could summon a servant, under normal circumstances, this servant didn't have a personality, and it would disappear after completing the assigned task and return to the heroic spirit seat. However, the servant summoned in Fuyuki City could completely replicate the personality of the corresponding heroic spirit with the help of the power and assistance of the Holy Grail, and as the magician's servant, it would be at his beck and call. This was completely possible because of the help of the Holy Grail. However, even with the help of the Holy Grail, the servant could only exist for a period of time during the Holy Grail War. When the Holy Grail War was over, it would naturally disappear because of the loss of magical power. The reason why the master could summon a servant without paying any price and hard work, and only with a magic circle and a spell, making the servant not only disappear after completing a task, but also continuously assist the master, was all because the Holy Grail was responsible for providing most of the magical power. Proportionally, in order to let the servant maintain the present world, the Holy Grail was responsible for providing at least 80% of the magical power, and the remaining 10% or 20% was provided by the master, so it didn't burden the master. Otherwise, with the magical power of a magician, even a particularly outstanding magician like Rin Enben couldn't bear all the magical power of a servant. Under such circumstances, once the Holy Grail war was over, the servant would disappear whether it was willing or not. And now, the Holy Grail was destroyed. Logically speaking, Saber and Ryder should have disappeared. However, the truth was not absolute. In this world, there would never be a lack of exceptions. Did Saber and Ryder really get a body like that, Gilgamesh? Tosakura tilted her head. It doesn't seem to be any different from before. There is still a difference. Rin Enben reminded. Saber doesn't count, but Ryder can't spiritualize now. This is the price for getting a body. This doesn't count as a price, right? Ilya said in boredom. To be able to eat flesh and get a body from the black mud, now, Saber and Ryder don't need to use any magical power to maintain the present world. To be able to get a legendary heroic spirit as a servant, not spiritualizing is not a price to pay. Yes. Saber and Ryder were like Gilgamesh. After being bathed in all the evil in this world, because they didn't get corrupted, they were able to maintain the present world without using any magical power. Because of this, Saber and Ryder continued to stay in this world and didn't return to the seat of heroes. And to get a heroic spirit as a servant, for a magician, was indeed a very good thing. Chapter 8:18. Under normal circumstances, a large-scale ritual could only summon a small part of the heroic spirit's power. Even if a servant was completely summoned, the servant wouldn't have any personality. After completing the assigned task, the servant would immediately disappear. In this way, being able to have a complete personality and be able to assist the master as a servant was an extremely significant achievement in the world of magic. In Rin and Osaka's words, if Saber and Ryder were seen by a magician from the spirit subjugation school, the magician would probably go crazy and hide in his own magic workshop to conduct inhumane experiments. Obtaining a servant as a tamed familiar was such a shocking thing. Compared to this, not being able to spiritualize was indeed a small price to pay. Not to mention, Saber and Ryder didn't need the master to provide them with magic power. This was the best thing that could happen. Of course, it was just maintaining the servant's world without consuming magic power. If Saber and Ryder wanted to fight, they would also consume magic power. And the ones responsible for providing magic power were Noah and Rin and Osaka's duties. But, is this really okay? The smile on Noah's face slowly disappeared as he stared at Saber and Ryder. You two aren't the type to want to continue your existence. Obtaining a body and staying in this era, is it really a good thing for you two? Neither Saber nor Ryder wanted to live another life. For Saber and Ryder, the most important thing wasn't their own lives, but other things. Therefore, obtaining a body and being able to maintain the servant's world in this world was really a good thing for Saber and Ryder. Rin and Osaka, Nakatsuki Sakura, and Ilya all seemed to have the same thoughts and fell silent. On the other hand, Saber and Ryder looked at each other and their expressions turned serious. Please don't worry, I'm willing to stay in this era. Saber's eyes were more or less complicated, but she still looked at Noah. Although it's hard to say, I really don't know where I should go. You told me that my wish was wrong, so I think I need some time to think about what I should do. I didn't think about it before. Because of this, I think this is what I need the most at this stage. For this reason, I decided to stay in this era. Saber bitterly smiled, but immediately showed a determined expression. Of course, my contract with Sakura will continue. As a servant, I swear on the sword in my hand that I will protect Sakura for the rest of her life. Saber. Tosakura was touched. Wait. Saber. Rin and Osaka was dissatisfied. I'm your master too, right? Why are you only talking about Sakura? Saber smiled, Rin and Osaka. I will never forget Rin. Rin, I also swear that I will be your sword in the future and protect you for the rest of your life. Only then did Rin and Osaka turn his head away in satisfaction and embarrassment. Then, what about Ryder? Noah looked at Ryder. You're more detached than Saber. You don't have any wishes, and you don't have a clear goal. Is it really okay to stay in this world? You're wrong, Master. My goal is very clear. From the very beginning, I've been very clear. Ever since I was summoned by you, I've already decided that as long as you're still my master, I'll protect you until the end. Ryder revealed a steady and beautiful smile. Even if the Holy Grail War ends, it will be the same, unless Master terminates the contract with me. Is that so? Noah bitterly smiled. But, Ryder, I'm sorry to disappoint you. As soon as he said this, the warm atmosphere suddenly froze. The smile on Ryder's face disappeared, and she looked at Noah seriously. Are you going to terminate the contract with me? Rin and Osaka, Tomatong Sakura, Ilya, Saber, and the other girls also looked at Noah with puzzlement, surprise, and even more solemn expressions. Since you stayed in this world for me, I will not terminate the contract with you, Ryder. Noah frowned. Isn't that considered betrayal? Do you think I'm that kind of person? Then. Ryder also frowned. What does Master mean? Didn't I tell you before? The reason why I participated in the Holy Grail War is to find what I need. Noah smiled. Now that I have found it, it is time to leave. Rin and Osaka, Tomatanjing, Ilya, and the other girls' expressions suddenly changed. Leave? That's true. Rin and Osaka said with a complicated expression. I almost forgot that you are not from Fuyuki City. Tomatanjing opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say anything. She could only lower her head and fall into sadness. As for Ilya, the little girl who stuck to Noah the most, at this moment, she was like a real adult. She didn't say anything, but she kept looking at Noah as if she wanted to imprint Noah's appearance in her mind. Leave? Ryder's frown became deeper and deeper. Since that's the case, why don't I leave with you? If I could do it, then I wouldn't say that. Noah shook his head. Although I can't say it clearly, the place I want to go, no one can go except me, not even you, Ryder. This time, Ryder was silent. Since he couldn't follow the person he needed to protect, then there was no need for Ryder to continue staying in this world. In this case, it was better to terminate the contract. Saber, the only one who remained calm, asked Noah. Where do you want to go? Noah scratched his cheek. His eyes swept across Rin Enben, Tomatanjing, Ilya, and Ryder's face, and the bitter smile on his face became more and more intense. To make a girl show such an expression, even if he wanted to hide it, it would be a sin, right? That's why Noah hated parting. In the end, Noah only gave such an answer. If I have to say, then it's a place farther away than the outside world, than the seat of heroes, and even than the vortex of origin, right? Rin and Osaka, Tomatong Sakura, Ilya, Saber, Ryder, and the other girls all looked at each other. A place farther away than the vortex of origin? Are you kidding? Rin Enben couldn't help but ask. Is there such a place? Yes. Noah said without hesitation. It's because of such a place that I can meet you like this. Meeting. The girls fell into silence again. Noah reached out his hand, touched the head of Ilya, who was closest to him, and suddenly said to Ryder. Ryder, will you listen to my orders? Yes. Ryder responded without any hesitation. Master, do you have any instructions? Then, Ryder, let me give you the first order after you get your body. Noah suddenly smiled. Before I come back, you are responsible for protecting Ilya, understand? After receiving Noah's order, Ryder didn't ask anything and nodded heavily without any hesitation. Come back? Ilya looked straight into Noah's eyes. Will Big Brother come back? Rin Enben and Tomatanjing also looked at Noah, one with a serious expression, the other with a more or less hopeful expression. Facing the girl's gazes, Noah smiled and nodded with a smile. As long as there are people who miss me waiting for me, then I will definitely return to that place, whether it's in this world or another world. These words made the group of girls smile. The atmosphere turned warm again and didn't calm down for a long time. Chapter 8:19. It was still a pure white world. Once again returning to this world that could accommodate other worlds, Noah discovered that the world fragments that were scattered all over the ground were once again floating in the air, wandering around. What was different was that the worlds that were originally complete had all become fragmented due to that indescribable calamity. They had become incomplete feathers, and even the luster on them had decreased by a lot. Compared to those complete feathers, the incomplete feathers were undoubtedly quite dim. Seeing those dim and incomplete feathers, Noah couldn't help but recall the broken feathers that were scattered all over the ground like broken glass. His mood more or less fluctuated. Fortunately, these worlds weren't really destroyed. According to Gaia and Alea, if a world was really destroyed, then not even the feathers would be left, and it would directly disappear. That kind of situation was often when the world itself reached the end of its existence, ushering in the so-called end of the world. Only then would it die of old age and disappear. And because of the intervention of external forces, the destruction was just a formality. If it was destroyed in this kind of situation, then the world would shatter into fragments. Half of it would remain in the world space, while the other half would be lost to other worlds, quietly waiting for the moment to be restored. This process was carried out by Noah. Because it was only a formality, those fragmented worlds weren't really destroyed. Once Noah found the world fragments and restored the worlds, then these worlds would be restored to their original state before they were fragmented. Everything wouldn't be affected in any way. For example, if the world of type Moon was destroyed, then this world would enter a frozen state. Everything inside the world would disappear along with the fragmentation of the world. This included Aoko, Yuju, Rin and Osaka, Katsuya Sakura, Ilya, Saber, and Rider that Noah knew. When Noah finished restoring the world of type Moon, then this frozen state would be removed. Everything that originally existed in this world would once again be restored, continuing to operate without any influence. The world of form Moon had already been destroyed once. Later on, Noah repaired this world and received Gaia and Alea's invitation. Only then did he enter this world and meet Qingzi, Yuju, and the others. If the world was truly destroyed, then Qingzi, Yuju, and the rest would not have reappeared in this world after the world was restored, and continue to live. Therefore, unless it was the end of the world in the true sense, as long as Noah was there, every world in the between worlds had the possibility of returning to an intact and unaffected state. On the other hand, if Noah was no longer around, then these world fragments would continue to exist in the space between worlds, and the interior would remain in a frozen state until eternity. It was because of this that Noah could continue to pull himself together. However, he did not know if it could be considered lucky, but the worlds that Noah had existed in before were not destroyed. Although they were destroyed, they would only enter a frozen state. The people related to Noah would not truly disappear. After Noah repaired those worlds, they would return. However, Noah could not guarantee when he would be able to repair those worlds. After all worlds were the same. At least, in the space between worlds, every world existed in the form of a feather. They all had the same appearance, and there was no difference at all. Even the world fragments after being destroyed were exactly the same. Under such circumstances, even if the world could be completely restored, Noah could not guarantee that the world fragment he found was the fragment of the world he wanted to restore, right? For example, if the world of fairy tale was destroyed, then the other half of the world fragments that were lost to other worlds, Noah really did not know how to find it. Perhaps, if he was lucky, the world fragment that Noah found in the next world would be the world fragment of fairy tale. Perhaps, if he was unlucky, Noah might have searched through all the worlds before finally finding the fragment that belonged to the world of fairy tale. And this process could take a year, 10 years, 100 years, or even 1,000 years. If Noah could not see his family, friends, or lovers for 1,000 years, then Noah would not be able to bear it. Therefore, the worlds that he had been to were not destroyed. Noah felt lucky from the bottom of his heart. But, what is the thing that destroyed the worlds? Noah's eyes flashed. Gaia and Alea said that if I knew now, it would only increase my worries. Then, when will I know that it will not be troublesome? When I have the ability to deal with that disaster? Noah's eyes flashed. That is to say, what I should do now is to let myself continue to grow, right? Then become stronger. Noah took a deep breath. Strong enough to deal with everything. After saying this, Noah closed his eyes. Then, first of all, I should spend some time to increase the amount of magic stored in my mana source. After saying this, around Noah's body, a little bit of starlight began to appear, enveloping his body. Sprite. No matter how serious the injury or consumption was, it could be recovered in a very short period of time, allowing the user to return to his original incarnation. With the powerful recovery ability of this incarnation, Noah could obtain the same amount of magic stored as before in 2 to 3 hours. If he wanted to increase the amount of magic stored in his mana source, the incarnation called Sprite was undoubtedly a miraculous power. Noble and intelligent, elegant and beautiful, I praise thy life. Here is one with nature. The words that made people feel comfortable slowly reverberated in the space between worlds, causing the magic in Noah's body to increase at an extraordinary rate, and all of it poured into the dark hole-like mana source, continuously increasing the amount stored inside. In this way, the space between worlds, which had no concept of time, returned to silence following Noah's silence. After an unknown amount of time, Noah opened his eyes. The starlight that hovered around Noah's body slowly disappeared, indicating that the use of the Sprite incarnation had ended. Noah silently felt the terrifying amount of magic stored in his mana source, and couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. My current magic power is definitely more than 100 times more than before, right? Moreover, even if he cancelled the Sprite incarnation, his body that had entered a normal recovery speed was still continuously producing magic, allowing the magic to flow into the limitless mana source, and continue to store it. It's just that. Noah felt the terrifying magic power in the mana source, and was somewhat puzzled. Since creating the mana source, my magic power seems to have changed a little, not quite the same as before, as if there is something waiting for me to discover. It seems that my mana source should have other uses. Noah quietly nodded his head. Next, I will slowly explore it. After deciding, Noah raised his head, just in time to see a feather floating in front of him. He reached out his hand and pressed it. In the next moment, Noah's figure disappeared from where he was, and entered the inner part of the world. The feeling of entering a world, Noah had already experienced it many times. In general, this process was not long, and when his vision was restored, Noah would be randomly sent to a place and enter this world. That's right, randomly. In the past, Noah had never been sent to a strange place. Therefore, Noah did not have any vigilance towards this matter. However, this time, Noah was destined to be cheated. When his vision was restored, Noah did not have time to see anything clearly, and his feet suddenly lost weight, causing his body to fall. Plop. Even without having time to react, Noah felt that he had fallen directly into a pool of warm water. Chapter 8:20. The warm water directly came into contact with Noah's skin, which made Noah's brain, which was a little muddled due to the sudden inability to breathe, come back to his senses, and he quickly stepped down. Fortunately, the water level here did not seem to be high, and Noah stepped on the bottom at once, using his body to drill to the surface. Splash. In the sound of water, Noah finally emerged from the warm water and regained his breath. Ah! However, at the same time, a scream resounded throughout the space. The scream was very loud. Although it was very neat, one could still hear the difference in the sound, which proved that the loud and neat scream did not come from just one person. However, the scream was obviously the voice of a woman. Hearing the deafening scream, Noah had a bad premonition in his heart. At that moment, Noah quickly opened his eyes and took in everything in front of him. Then, the scene that was imprinted in Noah's eyes made this young man, who had cultivated his character since childhood, completely stunned. What appeared in front of Noah was a very vast bathroom. To be more precise, it should be a super large bathroom like the imperial baths in the palace. In addition to bathing pools of different sizes and colors in the bathroom, there were also huge trees and natural rocks, walls and pillars made of cut stone, and other indoor decorations were exquisite and solemn, extremely luxurious. What's more, the stone sculptures that sprayed water around the baths seemed to be made of gold. They were dazzling and exquisite. Anyone would have such thoughts about such a bathing pool. Extravagant. It was really too extravagant. That was not the most important thing. After all, if it was purely luxurious, it would not make Noah lose his composure. There was only one reason that made Noah stunned. That was, in this luxurious bathing pool, there were extremely important decorations that turned this place into a paradise. None of them were mediocre, and all of them had perfect appearances. A group of women in their teens to 30s appeared in different postures and positions in this bathing pool, either soaking or lying down. At this moment, Noah was in one of the bathing pools. Therefore, Noah took a good look at those women who all had perfect looks, including those women's naked bodies. The paradise in front of him, without any suspense, made Noah's head dizzy. And the whole bathing pool, the women with perfect appearances, opened their eyes wide, looked at Noah, and made a sharp noise. There's a pervert. Someone can break into this bathing pool dedicated to gods. Is that a human? It's a human. It's a human. A human pervert has appeared. The whole bathing pool suddenly became a mess. However, Noah didn't know if it was an illusion or not. Noah always felt that in addition to shyness and shame, these women in front of him had more interest in their eyes and faces than shyness and shame. That look on his face was as if he had found some fun. Then, the following development became a matter of course. Catch that pervert. Hearing this, Noah finally reacted. Generally, in this situation, there were 3 choices. 1. Explain clearly. 2. Surrender without resistance. 3. Run away. The first option was undoubtedly the way a real gentleman would choose. However, past experience told Noah that at this time, the more he explained, the more chaotic it would be. The second option was a wise move, at least in the end, there was the possibility of being forgiven and explained. However, he had just arrived and didn't even know where this place was. If he surrendered, it might lead to unimaginable consequences. For example, when questioned on how to get in here, how should Noah answer? Could it be that he was cheated by the world for once? Therefore, this option was not feasible. In the end, Noah's forced calm brain gave him an answer that almost made him collapse. Escape. He had to escape. Once he escaped and understood the situation of this world, he would be able to think of a better solution. Splash. The moment he got the answer, without any hesitation, Noah jumped out of the bathing pool and rushed to the exit next to him. He escaped. That pervert escaped. Catch him. The group of women with perfect appearances immediately changed their shy and indignant looks. Like children who had seen some interesting toys, they did not hesitate to climb out of the bathtubs and swarm towards the outside. After rushing out of the bathing pool, Noah found that he was in a very magnificent building. The style of the building was a bit similar to ancient Europe, very much like the Western palaces, very luxurious. The reason why Noah felt like he was in a Western palace was that in such a corridor, there were members who looked like guards, wearing staff uniforms. They looked like soldiers on patrol. Because Noah rushed out of the bathing pool, the staff in the corridor all stopped and looked at Noah with their mouths half open. That was natural. Seeing a man rush out of the women's bathing pool, anyone would be stunned. Noah could only curse secretly. Before the staff could react, he rushed forward, broke the glass of a window, and rushed into the street. Only then did the neatly dressed women rush out of the bathing area. He escaped to the street. You've got guts, human. He even dares to peep at the goddess. We must catch him. Quick. Don't let him escape. As if they were enjoying a game of hide and seek, a group of people who called themselves goddesses directly jumped out of the window that Noah broke and chased in the direction of Noah. Among them, there was one person who stayed behind. It was a woman with vermilion hair and eyes that seemed to emit a faint red light in the darkness. However, her vermilion hair was tied into a ponytail, and her eyes were slightly narrowed. She looked very likable and more or less had a neutral feeling to her. That group of idiot goddesses, how can they catch up with him like this? That human skill looks good, but we gods can't use divine power in this world. Even our body is only at the level of an ordinary person, so it's impossible to catch up with him. Saying this, the woman with the vermilion ponytail smiled. Fortunately, my clan is waiting for me nearby. Watch me take him down. After saying this, the woman with the vermilion ponytail seemed to have found a fun game and ran in another direction. It was not until this time that the surrounding staff reacted, and one by one, they began to make a noise. Someone actually broke into the bathing area used by the goddesses. And, it looks like it's a human. Where did this human come from, so brave? He's simply a brave man. It's a pity that he has aroused the curiosity of those goddesses. That man will probably be played with, right? I'll be toyed with, he'll definitely be played with. Noah, the initiator, did not know that after breaking into the women's bathing area, not only was he not despised by outsiders, but he was also respected and worshipped. Although, compared to respect and worship, there was more pity. Where did he go? Where did he run to? Did he let that pervert escape? Did you see a human male with black hair, completely soaked? A group of goddesses caused a commotion on the crowded street. Some looked around, some directly grabbed a passerby to ask, and while causing a commotion, they scattered and acted separately. Noah, who was hiding on the top of a building, looked at the commotion on the street below with some lingering fear, and the corners of his mouth twitched. They actually came out personally to catch him. Aren't these women too tough? I'd better hurry up and leave. Noah retracted his head, jumped from the side, and entered an alley. Just as Noah was about to enter the depths of the alley, the light above his head was suddenly blinded. Whoosh! A figure descended from the sky, and with a spin, its leg was like a whip, carrying the sound of the wind as it landed on Noah's head. Chapter 8:21. Who? When the leg whip, which carried the sound of the wind, landed fiercely on Noah's head, Noah only saw a head of elegant golden hair. Then, the leg whip, which looked very sharp but actually held back a little, covered Noah's field of vision and landed on the center of Noah's forehead, which was raised up. Noah almost instinctively turned around, the tip of his foot slightly moved on the ground, and his body moved a step back horizontally, allowing the leg whip to graze him directly. Swish! The leg, which turned into a whip shadow, suddenly landed in the air, brushing less than 5 centimeters in front of Noah, and landed heavily on the ground. Bang! With a muffled sound, although the ground was not blown up, a circle of dust was stirred up by the leg that landed on the ground. Only then did Noah once again touch the ground, and his body retreated rapidly. After pulling a distance away from the attacking figure, he stabilized his body and looked forward. However, when Noah saw the full appearance of the attacking figure, even Noah could not help but be a little surprised. Because, the person who attacked with a sharp posture, had an appearance that did not match her skills at all. It was a young girl with a tall and slender body wrapped in light clothing. The young girl had extremely soft and slender limbs, and she wore a revealing white dress with blue edges that only reached her roots. Her long golden hair, which reached her waist, emitted a brilliance that was comparable to any gold or treasure. From a female's point of view, it could be said to be graceful and delicate, but it had a baby face that was like a little girl's. At a glance, it was like a delicate and beautiful porcelain doll that would shatter with a touch. Rather than saying that she was beautiful, it was better to say that she was aesthetically pleasing. She was like a fairy or a demon that appeared on the scene in a fairy tale. In addition, those particularly eye-catching golden eyes were very clear, so clear that they were somewhat transparent. It was definitely enough to make people stunned when they saw this appearance. The only imperfection was that there was almost nothing that could be called an expression on her beautiful face that was comparable to a celestial immortal's. Moreover, on her waist, there was a sword. Such a young girl, who made people think of a princess, and not a skilled warrior, looked at Noah with a calm and steady gaze, and withdrew her leg that was about to smash the ground. Noah really did not expect that the attacker who suddenly appeared would actually be such a beautiful and lovable young girl. However, Noah had seen many beautiful young girls, if not countless, but definitely not few. Naturally, he would not be distracted by that overly delicate young girl. He was just a little surprised, and frowned. Because, other than that young girl, several other footsteps began to sound, and they were approaching this side. Then, a few women rushed into the alley. What? Did you find that pervert? The one who said this was Lation. She had healthy, wheat-colored skin, and there was not a trace of gloominess on her face. One could tell at a glance that her personality was quite similar to Lation's. She was dressed like a dancer, with her chest exposed and back exposed. Only a thin piece of cloth covered her upper body, and a long wrap around her waist, exposing her graceful body without hesitation. That's the pervert? Beside the young girl was a young girl who, except for her waist-length hair, temperament, and body shape, looked like she was carved out of the same mold as the young girl. There was no doubt that they were sisters. Moreover, in terms of appearance and temperament, the former should be the more mischievous younger sister, and the latter should be the calmer and more mature older sister. Then, in addition to the healthy wheat-colored sisters, there was also a woman who ran over, panting. She was dressed in a somewhat neutral manner, with a red ponytail and narrowed eyes. Seeing the woman with the red ponytail, Noah secretly cursed in his heart. If he remembered correctly, in the large bathhouse just now, the woman with the red hair seemed to be among them. In other words, these young girls in front of him were all here to catch Noah. Ha! 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 As soon as the red-haired woman ran over, she immediately panted while looking at Noah with an evil smile. I've finally found you, you daring little brat. Hey, Loki. The wheat-colored younger sister said suspiciously. Is that really the pervert who peeped on you bathing? There can't be a mistake, right? The elder sister's side also spoke up. He's a little handsome, but he doesn't look like it. Don't judge by appearance, Tiona. The goddess named Loki pointed at Noah like a famous detective who had found a big clue. Look, his clothes are wet. That's proof that he just fell into the bathhouse. It seems so. The wheat-colored younger sister named Tiona looked at Noah with interest. Then I'm sorry, big brother over there. It's your bad luck to meet Loki who's mixed in with the goddesses. Hey, what do you mean mixed in with the goddesses? Loki said in a kansai tone, dissatisfied. I'm also a true goddess, okay? But undoubtedly, you didn't care that you were seen naked. You just thought it was interesting and came to catch him, right? The wheat-colored older sister named Tiona sighed, but her words were extremely bold. Really, it's just being seen. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat. Why are you making such a big fuss? AIC, hurry up and catch him. End this farce and go back to prepare for the next time we enter the dungeon. The blonde girl named AIC nodded slightly and looked at Noah expressionlessly. She lifted her foot and slowly walked in the direction of Noah. Whoosh! Halfway through, the girl named AIC immediately lowered her body and bounced her slender body out like an arrow. She violently shot in the direction of Noah and raised one of her hands. The girl named AIC probably intended to go behind Noah and knock him out. From the nonchalant expressions of the self-proclaimed goddess Loki and the girls named Tiona and Tiona respectively, it was clear that they didn't doubt that the girl named AIC could take down Noah. Therefore, in the next moment, a scene that no one expected occurred. Clatter. Almost at the instant when the girl named AIC rushed in front of Noah, without waiting for the girl to go behind him, Noah's foot stepped down with a crisp sound. He didn't retreat but instead advanced and grabbed the girl's raised hand. Paw! With a soft sound, Noah grabbed the young girl's pitifully delicate wrist and twisted it. Under the young girl's slightly shocked expression, he suddenly twisted the young girl's wrist behind her back and locked it up. With another push, he directly captured the young girl. The girl who didn't expect this result was stunned. Loki, Tyon, and Tyon couldn't react in time. By the time they reacted, the situation between Noah and AIC had changed again. AIC's eyes narrowed. With a twist of her heel, her body strangely broke free from Noah's grasp. She appeared beside Noah and lifted her leg. Once again, her slender leg kicked towards Noah's head with the sound of the wind and a strong gust of wind. Bang! A fist suddenly blasted out at the moment when AIC's kick was about to land. It smashed into the sole of AIC's kick. A muffled sound rang out, and a strong gust of wind was stirred up. Both parties were blown away from each other. Then, AIC immediately slid down and flipped her body. Her right palm supported her body on the ground and her other leg made a half circle in the air. Then, she swung her leg toward Noah's neck. Bang! However, this attack landed on an arm that had been raised up at some point in time, causing another muffled sound to ring out. The force seemed heavy, but it didn't make Noah retreat even a step. This time, not only Loki, Tiona, but even AIC herself was surprised. She lightly patted the ground with her right hand and her body bounced up with the help of the recoil. She nimbly made a beautiful circle in the air and landed on the ground. After a round of attack and defense, the blonde girl named AIC didn't fall into a disadvantageous position, but she obviously couldn't do anything to her opponent. And although her opponent didn't gain any advantage, he was only defending all the time. It was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. At this moment, everyone realized what was going on. He was definitely not an ordinary pervert. Chapter 8:22. There was dead silence in the audience. It's a lie, right? Tiona murmured. AIC, there's no way to deal with him. Although AIC hasn't shown her true ability, to be able to deal with AIC, the opponent's level must be around LV4, Tiona also frowned. But, it's impossible for an existence above LV4 to not be famous, right? The smile on Loki's face disappeared little by little, and some light appeared in her eyes that had been squinting. She stared at Noah in front of her and spoke. Hey, kid, which clan tribe are you from? Clan tribe? Noah's eyes flickered. From the beginning, these girls in front of him had been saying a few words that Noah didn't understand, which made Noah quite puzzled. For example, goddess. Could it be true? That woman named Loki was really a goddess? Moreover, listening to these girls, it seemed that the women in the bathhouse that Noah was in just now all looked like goddesses. When did goddesses become so rampant? Indeed, in terms of appearance, the women in the bathhouse were unexpectedly perfect, almost none of them were mediocre. If they had to be rated, even Noah could only give a high evaluation of 90 points. But just because they looked good, they were called goddesses? Sure enough, information was the most important. In a situation where he was unfamiliar with the place and didn't know anything, Noah could only be full of doubts about what others said. The only thing he was sure of was one thing. That was, this world was definitely not set in the modern era. Because, since coming to this world and falling into the bathhouse, the language that Noah heard definitely didn't belong to any modern language. If it wasn't because Noah was a god slayer, and had the 1,000 languages ability to learn the other party's language in a very short time, right now, he probably couldn't even understand Loki's words. It seemed that he had to quickly familiarize himself with this world. Noah, who made such a decision in his heart, didn't hide anything and said such a sentence. What is a clan tribe? As soon as this sentence was spoken, Noah saw it clearly. Including A's, who had been staring at him without blinking, the group of girls were all stunned. You don't know what a spawn is? Tiona asked in surprise. Could it be that you didn't join the clan tribe? Did you not receive any favor? Favor? Noah felt a headache coming on. What is that? Tiona and Tioni exchanged a glance. The girl named AIC stared at Noah, her gaze never moving away. Her eyes were so clear that they were almost transparent, rippling with emotions that no one else could detect. Loki also stared at Noah, but there was no obvious color in his eyes. Instead, he said this suspiciously. You're not pretending, are you? Could it be that you want to say that you didn't even receive God's favor? Did he want to say that he was an ordinary person who wasn't even level 1? Are you playing with me? That's right, Tyagni agreed. A guy who isn't even level 1, how could he not even have a way to take down AIC? Hearing the group of girls talking to themselves, Noah was also angry. From the beginning, you've been talking about level 1, do you think this is a game? Seeing Noah's angry look, the group of girls looked at each other again. Hey, Tiona said carefully to Tiona. He can't be serious, right? How would I know? Tiona folded her arms. However, didn't Loki say before that before God came to this world, there were humans in this world who could compete with monsters? Even if they didn't receive God's favor, they still had strength that could compare to us. Could it be that this man is still one of those ancient warriors? Ancient warriors? Loki looked at Noah and suddenly laughed. Good. AIC. Capture him for me. Whether he really has that kind of power without even receiving God's favor, let us see for ourselves. AIC nodded, her eyes never moving away from Noah. She stepped forward again, her hand slowly placed on her waist, holding the hilt of the sword hanging at her waist. In this moment, the feeling AIC gave off completely changed. If AIC could be said to be a ferocious deer, then the moment AIC held her sword, she became a dangerous lioness. Obviously, the close combat just now was not AIC's true ability. AIC's true ability was on that sword. Seeing this, Noah, who felt that he couldn't avoid it, sighed and met AIC's gaze. Although I think it's useless to say it, I still want to say it. If I say that I didn't peek, and that it was just an accident, would you believe me? The one who answered Noah wasn't AIC who was slowly walking towards him, but Tiona who was watching the show from the back. Brother over there, you're mistaken. Loki wants to capture you, not because you peeked, but because he's interested in you. Interested in me? Noah frowned. In other words, you're not here to denounce me? Both Tiona and Tiona smiled, silently telling Noah the answer. If that's the case. Noah lost interest. Then I won't keep you company. After saying that, Noah turned around, intending to walk into the depths of the alley, but a sharp sound pierced through the air behind him, causing him to turn his head abruptly. He saw that AIC's figure had already turned into a black line, and suddenly appeared in front of Noah. She held a thin sword tightly in her hand, and a faint wind swirled around the sword, causing the sharp sound of the wind to suddenly appear. She pointed the sword at Noah from afar, and the sharp edge of the sword flashed a cold light under the sunlight. AIC's figure fluttered like a leaf in the wind, and in an instant, she rushed in front of Noah. Clang! The long sword in her hand naturally turned into a sword light, and the moment AIC appeared in front of Noah, the sword in her hand swept out and viciously slashed at Noah's shoulder. However, almost at the same time, another sword light flashed out and met AIC's long sword. Clang! Along with the crisp sound of the collision, AIC's thin sword and a knight's sword that shone with a golden light, causing sparks to fill the sky. If Saber was here, she would definitely recognize this sword. That was the sword in the stone. After blocking the attack of the thin sword, Noah slightly raised his eyes and met AIC's pair of clear eyes, but there was a trace of impatience in his eyes. I don't have time to play games with you, so please, if you want to catch someone to play with because you're bored, then go find someone else. After saying that, Noah's hand that was holding the sword suddenly tightened. Clang! The sound of steel clashing against steel reverberated in the air, and the two swords that were clashing against each other were repelled by the recoil. AIC felt a huge force coming from her sword, and then her whole body was pushed back a few steps. After pushing AIC away, Noah held the sword in the stone tightly, and his body was like a spring that was pushed to the limit as he rushed into the depths of the alley. AIC's expressionless face became more serious. She dashed toward Noah's back, and on the long sword in her hand, a gentle breeze blew and wrapped around the sword. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice it. However, in the next second, AIC's attack was so sudden that it was impossible not to notice it. Wang! The long sword that was wrapped around by the gentle breeze suddenly swelled up a gust of wind, and it enveloped AIC herself. Then, AIC pointed the long sword that was wrapped in the wind at Noah in front of her, and the tip of her foot tapped the ground. Shio! Suddenly, AIC's whole body was carried by the wind, and she turned into a bullet. With the help of the gentle breeze, she quickly dashed forward. Her speed was so fast that one could barely see a white line flashing through the air. Immediately after, AIC tightly gripped the sword that was entwined with wind. Bringing along a ray of sword light, it was like a cold bolt of lightning. It went against the wind, rode on the wind, and drove the wind. It left behind an afterimage in the air as it pierced towards Noah, who was in front of her. Chapter 8:23. Shio! Amidst the piercing sound, the golden-haired girl who had transformed into a bullet wielded a long sword that stirred up a gentle breeze. She cut through the void like a ray of light that suddenly flashed through space. Like a meteor, she violently shot in the direction of Noah, who was planning to retreat. Noah, who had no intention of accompanying the other party, could only knit his brows when he sensed the wind that came from behind him. His body suddenly paused. His toes pressed on the ground and he borrowed the pushing force to take a step back to the side. AIC, who had transformed into a ray of light that stirred up a gentle breeze, brushed past the side of Noah's body. The sharp wind brought about by it caused Noah's skin to feel a little stinging pain. However, this was not the end. Just as she brushed past Noah's side, AIC's delicate body immediately turned in midair. Like a bolt of lightning that turned around, she drew a beautiful arc and once again shot in the direction of Noah's direction. That appearance was simply like a laser that could automatically track people, which was extremely annoying. At the very least, Noah, who had no intention of accompanying her, was really annoyed by her pestering. You asked for it. Facing AIC, who had once again transformed into a ray of light and shot straight towards him, Noah's mind was immersed in his own body. In Noah's body, the dark and hollow mana source was silently devouring the energy coming from all directions, completely absorbing it. That energy was the magic power that was regenerating itself all the time. At this moment, the mana source that had been in the state of devouring suddenly trembled. Wang! In the trembling sound that could only be heard by Noah, the mana source that had been in the state of storing and devouring the mana suddenly erupted. It transformed a stream of pure mana into a torrent and spurted it out. Under Noah's control, it surged towards his four limbs. Immediately after, a series of electrical wiring lines began to spread out from Noah's four limbs, covering Noah's hands and feet. Noah clenched the sword in the stone in his hand, causing the blade of the sword in the stone to flash with a dazzling light, as if it was plated with a layer of golden light. He suddenly swung it, and with an astonishing force, it fiercely met the incoming ray of light. Clang! Along with the loud sound of swords clashing rang out, a fierce wind suddenly burst out like a shockwave at the point of contact between the two sharp swords. Pung! With a muffled sound, AI's entire body was blown away by the shockwave. Her whole body was surrounded by a breeze, and she was involuntarily sent flying. In the next second, before AI could react, a black shadow carrying a golden light suddenly shot towards her. The strong oppressive sound of the wind caused AI's eardrums to hurt a little. This caused AI's expressionless face to twitch slightly. Her body did not hesitate to be blown by the breeze, and she instantly retreated a distance of nearly 10 meters as if she was gliding. However, the moment AI's body retreated, a dazzling vortex suddenly appeared under the feet of Noah, who was holding the golden sword in the stone and had transformed into a black shadow. In the midst of an explosion, the vortex turned into a powerful thrust, causing Noah's speed to soar by nearly 2 times in an instant. The black shadow that could barely be seen was like a phantom. With a flash, it appeared in front of AI like a ghost. AI's expression finally changed. Raising his head, Noah stared at AI. His hand that was not holding the sword clenched into a fist. A dazzling vortex of air also fluctuated above it. Mixed with a terrifying gust of wind, it carried an ear-piercing sound as it mercilessly blasted towards AI's beautiful face. Clang! The fist that carried an astonishing force and dazzling vortex of air suddenly smashed onto the sword that AI's hurriedly raised. The terrifying impact directly turned AI into a fragile flower petal that was blown away by a gust of wind. The aftermath set off a shockwave that sent AI's slender body flying. AI! Loki, Tiona, and Tiny cried out in alarm. AI's feet fiercely stomped on the ground. She rubbed against the ground and plowed a trail. After rubbing against the ground for more than 10 meters, she barely managed to stabilize her body. Coincidentally, the direction that AI's body was flying towards was exactly where Loki, Tiona, and Tiny were. Therefore, by the time she stabilized herself, her back was already close enough to touch Loki, Tiona, and Tiona's group. Seeing this, Noah smiled triumphantly and tossed out the sword in the stone in his hand. A golden ripple fluctuated in the surrounding space and swallowed up the sword in the stone that had been tossed up. "Oh no!" Tiona shouted. "He's going to escape. Don't let him escape." Loki was anxious. "All of you, attack together and catch him." "Catch me?" Noah reached his hand into the golden ripple that fluctuated in the surrounding space and took out a necklace. "You'd better eat by yourself." After saying that, Noah threw the necklace in his hand into the air. Clang! A burst of dazzling light suddenly burst out from the necklace, illuminating the entire space in an instant. Loki, Tiona, and Tyogni all shut their eyes out of reflex and put their hands before their eyes to block the blinding light. Not long after, the dazzling light suddenly disappeared without any warning. The group of girls quickly opened their eyes and looked forward. Over there was only a dark alley, which was unusually empty. As for Noah, he had naturally disappeared without a trace. "Oh no." Tiona sighed. "He got away. He actually managed to escape." Tioni blinked as he looked at Loki. "Loki, what should we do next?" "What should we do?" "Of course, we're going to keep looking." Loki giggled. His eyes, which had narrowed into slits, were shining brightly. If that little guy really didn't even receive the favor, and yet he was beaten up so badly by AI's hands, how can I let him go? What? Tiona's interest was piqued. "Loki, do you want to pull that big brother into our clan?" "Of course," Loki said without hesitation. "That's a human who didn't even receive the favor, yet he was able to deal with the LV5 AIs. If we don't pull him in, are we going to wait for him to be poached by the other clan?" Tiona and Tiny nodded in understanding. Potential. The meaning of this term wasn't that Noah only had potential and no strength, but that Noah had room for improvement. From Loki's words, it could be inferred that a girl like AI could have such amazing fighting strength because she received the so-called favor. In the eyes of Loki and the others, if Noah had also received the so-called grace and was able to fight against Ace, who had received the grace, then he would definitely become very powerful. Under such circumstances, who would be willing to let Noah go? "I just thought it was interesting, but I didn't expect to have such an unexpected gain. When I go back, I have to let those little guys quickly collect information about him." Loki was somewhat impatient. "Don't let the other gods find out." From Loki's expression, it could be seen that her interest was completely piqued. Tiona and Tioni, on the other hand, didn't seem to care. Only AI's awe-inspiring aura when facing Noah completely disappeared and was replaced by a confused expression. "Hey, Loki." AIC tilted her head and asked in a soft voice like a lost child. Her voice was so soft that it made people feel tender and protective towards her. Can he become so strong without receiving that favor? Hearing AI's words, Loki's expression became more or less serious. There will never be a lack of special existences in this world. That little guy is just one of them. Hearing this, AIC nodded her head as if she understood. She turned her head and looked at the empty alley. It was as if she could see the figure that was still standing there not long ago. Her clear golden eyes were twinkling, and no one knew what she was thinking. Chapter 8:24. In a dark, empty alley, Noah emerged from a dark corner. He looked back nervously to make sure that no one was chasing after him. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, his face full of bitterness. Why is it so noisy when I just arrived in this world? Doesn't this remind me of bad memories? Noah still remembered that when he had just entered the world of the God Slayer, he had been defeated by that idiot Tony not long after he had entered the world of the God Slayer. Everyone around him had been in a state of chaos. That experience could be said to be Noah's dark history, and he did not even want to talk about it. Today's experience gave Noah a sense of déjà vu when he first arrived in the world of the God Slayer. No matter how he thought about it, it was annoying. More importantly, there seemed to be the existence of gods in this world. Although they were certainly different from the God of disobedience, in the world of the God Slayer, there was no doubt that the gods in this world could also move about in the world where humans lived. After all, the grace of the gods is mentioned. Whether this god is a real god or not, this world doesn't seem to be that simple. As a God Slayer, when he encountered an enemy god, his body would automatically be filled with a sense of power. Noah didn't know if this reaction was the same when he met the gods of other worlds. In different worlds, the definition of God was more or less different. In different worlds, if there really was an existence called God, it was also very suspenseful whether it was the same or not. At least, until now, Noah had never met a god who was omnipotent in a broad sense. The gods that Noah encountered were not so much omnipotent existences, but rather, they were a group of individuals who were different from humans but possessed extremely powerful strength. Even if they had their own corresponding myths, these gods were not really invincible. Therefore, if there were gods in other worlds, they would probably be different from the gods in a broad sense. Therefore, in the world of the God Slayer, the body that could react to gods could not react the same way to gods in other worlds. This was not surprising at all. Whether or not the group of goddesses with perfect appearances that he had met in the big bathhouse were gods was still to be determined by Noah. However, Noah had a lot of interest in the so-called grace. It sounds like a kind of power that those guys who called themselves gods gave to humans, right? Noah recalled that he had a brief encounter with AIC. With that kind of power, even such a weak-looking girl can have that kind of strength? To be honest, AIC's strength still surprised Noah. In terms of physical strength, Noah felt that if he did not use the enhance magic to strengthen himself, he seemed to be somewhat inferior to AIC. Based on the servant's ability value, AIC's strength value was definitely around C level, and her dexterity value was definitely above B level. In addition, AIC's skills were not weak. Although she was not as good as Saber and Ryder, the combat power of the girl called AIC was already comparable to the average servant. No matter what, AIC would not be weaker than guys like Yen Feng, Chili, and Gumu Soichiro. Moreover, they also mentioned levels. The so-called grace should also have strong and weak powers, right? Noah narrowed his eyes. Then, what is the level of the girl called AIC? What is the level of the strongest guy in this world? It seems that for the time being, I still have to gather information first. After coming to this conclusion, Noah felt a little cold. Looking at his clothes that were still dripping water, he laughed bitterly. Let's change clothes first. Fortunately, in Noah's Gate of Babylon, there were also clothes. Of course, to be able to be placed in the Gate of Babylon, it was impossible for ordinary clothes to be placed in the Gate of Babylon. Those clothes had special effects to a certain extent. For example, some clothes had the property of magic, and could more or less resist the effects of magic. Another example was that there were clothes that could resist fire, cold, and even poison. Basically, there were all kinds of things. There were even some strange armors that had all kinds of strange abilities. Noah did not need to directly put on the armor, nor did he need to wear those clothes with special effects. He only needed to cover his body. However, in the Gate of Babylon, there were no ordinary clothes at all. In the end, Noah chose a set of clothes that had no practical effect, but it was warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and put it on. Although he did not know the specific situation of this world, when Noah was escaping from the pursuit of the goddesses, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of the clothes of the people on the street. They were not modern clothes, but more or less similar to the clothes worn by the people of the old era. It was like a dancer's style, or a Greek style, everything was there. Noah chose a set of clothes that was closer to this style. In fact, it was just a set of old-fashioned knitted sweater and trousers with a knee-length coat. After feeling that there was nothing strange, Noah looked around and walked to the place where there were sounds of people. Wah! On the busy street, the noise was like the noise of a busy city, and it went straight to the sky. Standing in the middle of the street, Noah looked at the people coming and going and was somewhat speechless. This was because Noah did not only see humans like himself. Here, there were people with a pair of long ears and a rather outstanding appearance. Here, there were people with the ears and tails of some kind of animals, and some of the characteristics of beasts. Here, there were people who were only half the height of an ordinary adult, but looked to be around 30 to 40 years old. Here, there were people who were similar to humans, but had explosive muscles and bold and cool clothes that would make people feel shy. Then, on both sides of the street, there were similar shouts coming from the stalls. "Brother Elf over there. Come and take a look. There's equipment suitable for orcs here. Clothes that can even match the size of the dwarfs. Come in and take a look. Lords of the Amazon. Don't you want to look at the fruits here? Elves. Orcs. Dwarfs. Amazon." One by one, the names of the races with a fantasy style entered Noah's ears, and Noah rubbed his temples. "I see, if this is a world where not only humans, but also other races that only exist in legends live, then it's not strange that there are gods." In Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, and various other famous mythological systems, there were all kinds of content about humans and other races living together. In the world known as the mythological era, it was a common thing for mythological creatures to run amok. Races like elves, orcs, and dwarfs also appeared frequently. It seems that this is a world similar to the mythological era. Noah walked forward while observing his surroundings without leaving a trace. If this is a world like this, then it's no wonder that a random girl has such strength. Noah, who said this, didn't know that even in such a world, the strength of the girl named AIC was top-notch. Noah didn't know about this until later. Now, he was still in a state of being kept in the dark. No matter what, the most important thing now is to gather information. Noah thought to himself. Based on the style of this world, there should be places like taverns, right? Since ancient times, taverns were the easiest places to gather information. Just by listening, those who were drinking and bragging would reveal a lot of information. With this thought in mind, Noah started to pay attention to both sides of the street. Not long after, a building that was similar to the other shops on both sides of the street, made of stone bricks and wooden planks, entered Noah's field of vision. It was a 2-story building that extended backwards. On the signboard hanging in front of the shop, there were these words: "Mistress of Fertility." Chapter 8:25. The Mistress of Fertility. Looking at the words written on the signboard hanging in the shop, Noah also spent a lot of effort to recognize it. As a god slayer, although Noah had the ability to learn a language in a very short time, it did not mean that he could also learn the words. The reason why he could recognize the words on the signboard was because the priest incarnation had the characteristics of giving language and words power, so Noah's sensitivity to language and words was better than the other god slayers, so he could recognize something similar to a sixth sense. Of course, at best, it made Noah more sensitive to language and words. If he wanted to recognize words that he did not know at all, it would still take a lot of effort. Therefore, it was okay to recognize the words on the signboard, but it was not so easy to recognize the words of an article. It's just that the name, the Mistress of Fertility, doesn't look like the name of a tavern. With this thought, Noah looked through the door of the tavern and looked into the shop. The first thing Noah saw was a very tall woman in her 40s behind the bar-like counter, serving hot dishes and a variety of alcohol to entertain the guests. That should be the female owner, right? Then, in the shop, there were seats and seats made of wooden tables and wooden chairs, and there were all kinds of people sitting on them. There were orcs. There were villains. There were humans. There were also Amazons. People of different races seemed to be harmonious at this time, each of them sharing a seat, eating and drinking, and making noise. Next to these guests, there were young girls who were either carrying plates with drinks and wine, or steaming dishes, walking around busily. There were also shop assistants who were greeting the guests. These shop assistants were all wearing a tender leaf-colored sundress that reached below the knee, and there was a long apron tied outside the skirt, which seemed to be the staff uniform in this shop. Wearing such clothes, there was no doubt that the waiters in the shop could only be women. In a tavern that looked like a gathering of all kinds of bad people, the waiters were all women? It seemed that this shop was different from the ordinary taverns. Otherwise, if something like molestation happened, Noah did not think that a group of ordinary shops with all women could do anything. In such a shop, would Noah be able to get the information he wanted? Just as Noah was thinking about this, a delicate voice came from the shop. "Welcome." Accompanied by such a voice, a girl holding a tray came out of the shop. It was a girl with dark light gray hair tied a few times at the back of her head, and then a ponytail hanging down. She had the same color as her hair and milk-white delicate face, as if the adjectives like playful and cute were directly written directly on her face, giving the feeling of a girl next door. The girl shouted into the store with a clear and loud voice. "A customer. Please prepare the drinks." Noah raised his eyebrows when he heard the girl's cry. It seemed that he hadn't decided whether to enter the shop or not. "I'm just standing at the door, do I need to go in as a customer?" It's a bit like forcing a deal. The girl who didn't know Noah's thoughts smiled at Noah. "Customer, please come in." Noah blinked and felt helpless in his heart. Forget it, since it's already like this, I'll just go in. With this in mind, Noah also stepped into the shop. Under the guidance of the girl, he walked to the corner of the shop. The people in the shop were still immersed in their own quarrels and did not pay attention to Noah, who was led into the shop. Under such circumstances, Noah came to the corner of the shop and sat down on the side of the bar. Perhaps because Noah was only one person, so she didn't let Noah occupy a table by himself, but brought him to the bar. Therefore, Noah's position just happened to be on the side of the burly female shop owner. It could be said that he was facing the burly female shop owner, who had an amazing sense of oppression. Immediately, the previous waitress asked with a sweet smile. "Excuse me, what do you want?" Noah, who was observing the situation in the shop, said almost casually. "A cup of black coffee." Hearing this, the girl was stunned. She tilted her head and asked suspiciously, "Black coffee?" Only then did Noah wake up. In this world that was not set in the modern world, not to mention black coffee, even tea was a problem. At that moment, Noah shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Just a drink and a side dish that can fill the stomach will be fine." This sentence seemed to be heard by the burly female shop owner. "Oh." The burly female shop owner suddenly looked down at Noah with a condescending gaze and smiled provocatively. "Just a drink and a side dish that can fill the stomach will be fine, right?" Saying this, the burly female shop owner filled a wine glass the size of a jar with wine. Then, she turned around and placed a full plate of noodles and wine in front of Noah. Then, the burly female shop owner said straightforwardly, "This will definitely fill the stomach." Looking at the noodles that were stacked up to his neck and the large glass full of wine, Noah almost covered his face. How should he put it? This tavern was indeed different from other taverns. To put it nicely, it was called forthright. To put it bluntly, it was called full of bandit spirit. And it just so happened that this atmosphere hit the soft spot in Noah's heart. After all, in Fairy Tale, there was a similar atmosphere. Therefore, Noah laughed and picked up the cutlery. "What?" the burly female shop owner said with some surprise. "Don't you want to ask how much it is?" Noah glanced at the burly female shop owner and sighed. "Don't worry, I definitely won't owe you." "Very good. I like young people like you. Come often in the future." The burly female shop owner suddenly smiled domineeringly. My name is Mia, you can just call me by my name. After saying this, the burly female shop owner named Mia didn't continue to entertain Noah and continued to busy herself. My name is The young waitress who led Noah in also said to Noah with a smile that made people feel close to her. Mia's mother rarely likes customers who meet for the first time, Mr. Adventurer. Adventurer? Noah's heart skipped a beat, and he turned his gaze to the girl named Do I look like an adventurer? The waitress named tilted her head strangely. Aren't you an adventurer? I do like to take risks, Noah said with a smile, intentionally or unintentionally. I just don't know what kind of adventure you're referring to. What kind of adventure? She's face was full of doubt. Are there many kinds of adventurers? Who knows? Noah asked without batting an eyelid. Then what kind of adventure are you referring to? She said to Noah with an increasingly confused expression. What kind of adventurer? Isn't it the kind of adventurer who explores the underground city? Underground city? Noah muttered to himself. Speaking of which, the girl named Tyagni also seemed to have mentioned the term underground city. That should be a rather important place, right? Let's start from this aspect first. I just arrived in this city not long ago. Noah shrugged helplessly at So, I can't be considered an adventurer who explores the underground city for the time being, right? In other words, you're an outsider? She came to a realization. This labyrinth city has adventurers from the outside almost every day. Did you just arrive not long ago? Not long ago? Noah laughed bitterly. I've only been in this city for less than half a day. So, are you worried about what to do next? She put a finger on her chin and gave such a suggestion. Then I suggest you go to a second-hand bookstore not far from here. There are many records about Eulalie there. You should be able to get a lot of help. The most important information was obtained. Chapter 8:26. In the corner of the city, there was a bookstore. At this time, Noah was in the bookstore. After learning about the existence of this bookstore from Sheer, Noah rushed to this bookstore almost immediately after he finished his meal and plunged into it. His purpose was to get some information about this world. Next to one of the bookshelves in the bookstore, Noah was holding a book. While flipping through it, he absorbed the knowledge of this world like a sponge. Although it was said that he was absorbing knowledge, in fact, Noah was just taking out a book like a history book to roughly understand the situation of this world. It was not until this moment that Noah knew what kind of world he had come to. To be precise, it should be said that he knew what kind of place he had come to. Maze City, Eulalie. This was the name of the city Noah was now in. This was a huge city built on a maze known as the Underground City. In this city, there was an organization called the Guild, which was the manager of this city. With the Guild managing this city and the huge maze called the Underground City as the core, there were people from all places and races, including humans, who made a living here. It was a thriving city. That was Eulalie. The so-called Underground City referred to a super large maze located under Eulalie. It was a place with a complex and changeable environment, and there were fierce creatures called monsters, which were enemies of humans. It was a place of great danger. The guild managing this city also had the responsibility of controlling this dangerous place and encouraging people from all over the world to explore the underground city and defeat the monsters that threatened humans. The people who explored the huge maze called the Underground City and used the materials obtained from the Underground City as a source of income were commonly known as adventurers. Whether it was elves, orcs, dwarves, or Amazons, including humans, as long as they explored the Underground City as an activity, they were adventurers. Of course, in Eulalie, not only were there people from all over the world living together, but there were also gods from the heavens living here. They were transcendent existences that descended from the heavens 1,000 years ago. They were the source of God's grace bestowed upon the inhabitants of the lower realm. Because the life in the heavenly realm was very boring, these existences that surpassed human intelligence began to interfere in the lower realm with the attitude of a game. They descended on this land and set the rules that prohibited the use of divine power. They had to live in a state no different from ordinary people, like the residents of the lower realm. In other words, these gods were a group of transcendental existences who prioritized their own entertainment and experienced everything in the lower realm. Apart from that, they had no other purpose. Food, hobbies, friends, art, and even illness, the gods were always enjoying the life that only the inhabitants of the lower realm could have, and they never got tired of it, as if they were playing a game. In order to be able to eat, drink, and play, these gods who sealed their own power would bestow the power called grace to the inhabitants of the lower realm, allowing the inhabitants of the lower realm to join their subordinates and form a faction. This faction was the clan. Simply put, it was a force that was built around a certain god. What these forces called clan would do, it could be seen as the inclination of the god at the center. Some of them explored the underground city as a business, some opened shops and did business as a business, some grew food as a business, and some directly established a huge country. Its scale and nature were varied, nothing was too strange. No matter which race people were from, once they joined the god's clan, they had to work for the god. This was because the god would bestow the power called grace to their clan, so that they could change from ordinary people without any power to heroes and strong enough to compete with monsters. Therefore, under the grace of many gods, people would usually join a clan, get to know companions of the same faction, and go on adventures, trade, entertainment, and even fight. This was the current situation of this world. Not only Eulalie, but there were also gods and their clan in various places all over the world. It was just that compared to Eulalie, who had the underground city, there were fewer of them. And just as Noah knew, the people who received the grace of the gods were either strong or weak, and were usually differentiated by levels. The higher one's level, the more powerful one's power would be. The gods came to this world for fun? Noah closed the book in his hand and faintly sighed. Even so, these gods that came from the sky still changed the situation of the whole world. Wasn't that right? Originally, if there were no gods, then even if this world was a world with various races, it wouldn't be like now, where the gods were the center. Now, with the arrival of the gods, in addition to the grace they brought, the various races on this land had formed factions around the gods. They had joined their families and became laborers who had to pay for the gods' food, drink, and entertainment. Of course, the arrival of the gods wasn't all bad. At least, people received power from the grace of the gods. It was said that before the gods came, the underground city already existed. At that time, although there were some people who could fight monsters and could be called heroes and warriors, it was definitely not as common as it was now. Therefore, at that time, the monsters produced by the underground city would even invade the surface, and flock to all parts of the world, bringing unimaginable disasters to all parts of the world. Now, the people of the lower realm who received the grace of the gods were no longer like in ancient times, where they could only be slaughtered by monsters. In this era, the underground city was already controlled by the people of the lower realm who had received the grace of the gods, and basically no monsters would invade the surface anymore. It was also because there were still some brave people and heroes who could fight monsters in ancient times, that Loki and the others were surprised by Noah's fighting strength without receiving the grace. Ever since the power of the grace was obtained, no matter what race they were, when they wanted to obtain power, they would choose to join the clan and receive the grace bestowed by the gods, instead of clumsily training their mortal bodies. Moreover, no matter how hard they trained, it wasn't that easy to obtain the power to match the person who received the grace. If an existence like AIC was in ancient times, she would definitely be the most dazzling hero. No. Even in this era, an existence like AIC was the most dazzling. The grace of the gods? Noah scratched his cheek. Well, it's true that I'm more or less interested. Shrugging his shoulders, Noah stuffed the book back into the bookshelf. Just as he was about to continue looking for other books, a voice entered his ears. "Grandpa. I'm here again." This was a very delicate and clear voice. Judging from the voice, the other party should be underage, right? And the grandpa she was talking about should be the owner of this bookstore, right? The owner of this bookstore was an old grandpa. When Noah came in, he also knew which book was the most useful to him, so he saved the effort of looking for it. Then, the old grandpa's voice began to sound. Is it you again? Goddess Hestia? Didn't I say that I won't join your clan? Why won't you join? But, isn't there not a single person in your clan? So, there will be one soon. Okay, whatever the goddess says, goddess? Could it be, it's one of the goddesses that I saw naked in the bathhouse again? Noah's heart began to pound, and he poked his head out from the bookshelf and looked in the direction of the entrance. There, a young girl was arguing with the old shopkeeper. It was an out-and-out beautiful girl. She had lustrous long black hair, but tied into two ponytails hanging on both sides. Even so, it still reached her waist. She had a small round face and could be called a young girl. From her appearance, the girl's age was estimated to be only 14 or 15 years old. However, such a young girl with a tender appearance had a mature part that even Noah was surprised by. Because of this matter, the outside world is in chaos. There are people everywhere looking for you. It's said that someone saw you go to the Mistress of Plenty, and a large number of adventurers have started to move there. Don't you know? The corners of Noah's mouth twitched again, and a dark emotion began to rush to his head. That Loki, he even did something like a wanted person? Wasn't he planning to let everyone in Eulalia know that Noah broke into the bathhouse of the goddesses and saw more than half of the goddesses in this city? Noah could already imagine how famous his reputation in this labyrinth city had become and how bad it had become. He really regretted that he didn't make Loki suffer at that time. The only thing to be happy about was that Hestia didn't seem to intend to sell Noah's whereabouts or even himself to Loki's clan. If it was someone else, then I would get a lot of money now. I don't have to worry about it for a while. Unfortunately, it was Loki who issued the arrest warrant. Hestia's proud expression began to collapse. If I go to her to get money, I will definitely be laughed at for being poor, right? This sentence more or less comforted Noah. In other words, this goddess named Hestia and Loki didn't get along well, right? Then she probably wouldn't sell Noah out, right? Although Noah wasn't afraid, it would definitely become very troublesome. It was better to have less trouble. That. Noah suddenly smiled bitterly. That is to say, you weren't in that bathhouse at that time, right? I really want to go there, but that place is very expensive. I don't have that much money to enjoy there. Hestia stared at Noah. Don't tell me you want to see me naked? Hearing this sentence, Noah couldn't help but move his eyes down and look at Hestia's unscientifically full upper body. Then he quickly raised his eyes and took a step back. In that case, there is no enmity between us. Let's say goodbye here. After saying that, Noah was about to turn around and leave, but Hestia called out again. Wait. Perhaps she didn't want to say enough, so she ran to Noah and hugged one of Noah's arms. Make it clear to me first. Noah could clearly feel a wonderful sensation passing through his arm and into his nerves. He could even faintly hear the sound of something being squashed and flattened. His left foot, which had just lifted up, almost tripped on his right foot. Then, he fell to the ground head first. What are you doing? Noah almost reflexively began to struggle. You don't want to sell me for money, and I didn't see you naked, right? Why are you still grabbing me? That's true, but I still have a question. Hestia didn't let Noah's hand go, as if she didn't realize that she was giving Noah benefits. Unless you answer me, I won't let you go. Noah stretched out his other hand and pressed Hestia's head, pushing it away. If you have a question, just ask. Do you have to be so touchy? Hurry up. Hurry up and ask. Hestia ignored Noah's struggle and stared at Noah fiercely. Let me ask you, why did Loki put you on the wanted list? If you just happened to see her naked, that airport would never go through so much trouble to put you on the wanted list. You must have done something that made her have to find you. Should he say that Hestia was worthy of being a god who had lived for countless years? Even if she sealed her power in the mortal realm and became no different from an ordinary person, even if she looked like a willful little girl, she was still a god. Perhaps not only Hestia, but also the other gods would suspect Loki's intention to go to such an extent. As for Noah, it was impossible for him to really understand what Loki was thinking. How would I know what that idiot with a Kansai accent is thinking? Noah, who couldn't push Hestia away, could only helplessly cover his face. She just finds it interesting, right? Because I didn't accept the favor and almost beat that little girl named Aic to the ground? Huh? Hestia's cute face froze, and she asked tentatively with a stiff expression. What did you just say? Almost beat Aic to the ground? Is Aic that Aic? That's not right. Hestia suddenly realized something and cried out in alarm. You haven't accepted the favor yet? What's wrong? Noah frowned. Is it strange? Hestia didn't speak. She just stared at Noah. When she was sure that Noah didn't seem to be lying, she let go of Noah's hand, turned sideways, and muttered to herself. Without accepting the favor, how could he deal with the trump card of Loki's clan? That's why he was targeted? Could it be that Loki wants to poach him into his own clan? That's why he's wanted like this? Hestia turned her head and stared at Noah with sparkling eyes as if she was looking at a treasure. Could it be that I've picked up a treasure? Chapter 8:28. Even Noah had the urge to run away when he was stared at by Hestia's glittering eyes, as if she was going to swallow him whole. However, Noah also heard Hestia's mutterings. If Loki had really taken a fancy to Noah because he had forced the girl named Aiz to retreat without receiving any favor, and planned to poach Noah into his clan, then it would be reasonable for him to go through so much trouble to put out a bounty. However, to Noah, this reason made him politely decline. And the reason why Hesti suddenly stared at Noah with such a gaze was probably because she had the same idea as Loki. Sure enough, in the next second, Hesti pretended to be mature and coughed, then said, Actually, I've been looking for some adventurers recently, and I plan to let them join my clan. After saying that, Hestia looked at Noah with eyes full of hope. It was as if she was hinting at Noah to do something. It was a pity that Noah, who had expected Hestia's reaction, curled his lips in disdain. Really? Then I wish you success. After he finished speaking, Noah turned around, intending to leave. Seeing this, Hestia became anxious and hugged Noah's arm again. Hey, hey. At this time, you should say, do you think I can do it? Isn't that the best way to develop? Noah, who was once again entangled by Hestia, was finally able to ignore the wonderful touch. He helplessly said as he played tug-of-war with Hestia. I'm sorry, I'm such an unromantic man. You'd better find someone else to play this kind of King's Road development. No. You're the one I like. Hestia shook her head like a rattle drum, her two ponytails swinging back and forth, and said something that would make all the men and women in the world misunderstand. You can join my clan. Sorry, I'm really not interested. Noah mercilessly refused. I don't want to be a god's pawn. For the sake of eating, drinking, and having fun, the gods from the heavens bestowed the power called grace to the inhabitants of the lower realm, and let the inhabitants of the lower realm who received their grace become members of their clan and help them do things. Wasn't that just a pawn? Of course, this was a bit unpleasant to hear. After all, some clans' main activity was to do business. The relationship between the gods and the people of such clan was actually more similar to the relationship between a superior and a subordinate. If there were inhabitants of the lower realm who wanted to engage in business, make money, and support their family, then joining a clan with this kind of nature was not a bad thing. But generally speaking, that was only under the circumstances of necessity. Since Noah had the Gate of Babylon, he no longer needed to think about how to make money by himself. In the Gate of Babylon, piles and piles of gold and silver treasures had been piled up into mountains, so how could Noah lack money? In addition, Noah's Gate of Babylon not only had gold and silver treasures, but also all kinds of precious items that could not be measured by money. There were even treasures that originally only existed in legends, so why would he need to work for others for money? Since he did not need to worry about the problem of living, then there was no need to be a subordinate of those so-called gods, right? Although he had a lot of interest in the so-called grace, if it was exchanged with freedom as the price, then forget it. This was Noah's idea. However, when Noah said his idea, Hestia was angry. What pawn? Are you belittling my clan? Belittling? Noah raised his eyebrows. When did I belittle your clan? Isn't joining the clan of a certain god to become his subordinate and pay for his food, drink, and entertainment? Isn't that just a pawn? Indeed, there are some gods who establish clan for their own entertainment, but even so, not all gods use the children in the lower realm as labor and tools. Hestia's face was full of seriousness, and she even pointed a finger in front of Noah. Although the main nature of the clan of a god depends on the god at the center, some gods also establish their clan because they like to work. Some gods also like to plant in the fields, so they gather like-minded children in the lower realm to establish their clan together. For these gods, the people in the same clan are companions. I don't care what other gods think of their clan, but for me, my clan is my family, and the members of my clan are my family. They are not pawns. This sentence surprised Noah, who originally just wanted to brush Hestia off. Noah turned around and stared at Hestia's serious face. After a long while, he finally spoke. So, you established a clan just to get your family? That's one of the most important purposes. Hestia's face was full of seriousness. Apart from that, there's another very important purpose. Seeing that Hestia's expression was even more serious than before, Noah subconsciously asked. What purpose? Hestia raised her head and looked at Noah in the eye before she said, You're right. Raise me. Huh? Noah almost doubted his ears. What did you just say? Raise me. Hestia's serious expression completely collapsed, and she looked like she was about to cry. I just came to the lower realm not long ago, and I'm currently living with a friend of mine. But because I've been too idle all this time, my friend has begun to become impatient with me. If I don't establish a clan to raise me, she will definitely drive me out and let me live on the streets. At this moment, Noah felt that his internal organs were tumbling, and his strength began to drain away. Are you looking for your family? Are you looking for a nanny? No. In a sense, Hestia was indeed looking for her family. Raise her? Wasn't that the same as being a father who took care of Hestia's food and clothing? Is this level of request too much? Hestia puffed up her cheeks. She didn't look dignified at all, just like a child throwing a tantrum and being willful. Could it be that the grace of God is not enough to exchange for 3 meals a day? You're right. Noah was speechless. But why do I feel like something is wrong? Hearing this, Hestia glared at Noah, but in the next second, she softened and asked in a weak voice, What is it? Then, do you want to join my clan? Noah's brow furrowed. Frankly speaking, it wasn't that Noah hadn't thought of joining the clan tribe. After all, the mainstream of this world was the clan tribe. If he joined the clan tribe, it would not be a bad idea. At least, in this unfamiliar world, Noah could get a lot of guidance and wouldn't have to fumble around by himself. However, Noah didn't want to become a pawn of some gods. He would lose his freedom and be restricted in all aspects. How about this? Noah suggested to Hestia. If you promise not to restrict my movement and freedom, then I'll join your clan. How about it? Hestia's eyes lit up, and she shouted excitedly. You want to join my clan? You really want to join my clan? Don't forget the premise. Noah rolled his eyes. If you restrict my movement and freedom, then I'll quit at any time. Do you understand? Huh? Hestia said in dissatisfaction. Are you a god or am I a god? It doesn't matter who the god is. I've never wanted to be a god. Noah laughed bitterly. Or rather, I'm on the side of the gods who are hostile to me. On the side of the gods who are hostile to you? Hestia tilted her head. What do you mean? Nothing, Noah sighed. How about it? Can you accept this condition? Hestia puffed up her cheeks and looked at Noah with resentment. Then, will you support me? Noah laughed. If I support you, there's no problem. Chapter 8:29. Grandpa, I'm going to borrow the library on the second floor. While saying this, Hestia pulled Noah's hand and ran up the stairs of the bookstore to a room. It was a room filled with bookcases that occupied all four walls. Thick books were piled up in front of the bookcases. It's here. Hestia let go of Noah's hand as if the room belonged to her. She stretched out her slender arms and said to Noah excitedly, Let's go, Mr. Noah. I decided a long time ago that when I give my first grace to the children of the mortal world, I must do it in this place. Isn't this just an ordinary study? Noah asked curiously. Why do you have to choose this place? Because I like books from the mortal world the most, Hestia said without hiding anything. I haven't been in the mortal world for long, and I'm temporarily staying with my god friend. I don't have any spare change on me, so I can't buy books. Fortunately, the owner of the bookstore allowed me to read here, so I can be satisfied. This place is my favorite place. When I give my first grace to the most important family member, of course I'll choose this place. Is that so? Noah nodded and then asked the question he was most concerned about. By the way, Hestia, if I get your grace, how much will my strength increase? How much will your strength increase? Hestia was startled and then her shoulders drooped. I say, Noah, don't tell me you think that the grace of God is some kind of power that we directly give you? Huh? Noah was puzzled. Isn't it? Of course not. And it's a big mistake. Hestia stretched out a finger and put it in front of Noah's face. Listen, Noah, the grace that our God gives you isn't any kind of power. It's just an accelerator. An accelerator? Noah frowned. How should I put it? That is to say, that the grace that our God has given you is not an ability that will grant you power immediately. It is merely an opportunity, Hestia explained. Its main function is to uncover possibilities that you would never have the chance to discover in your lifetime, and turn these possibilities into your experience, as experience points, and nourishment for your growth. It doesn't matter if it's physical abilities, skills, or magic, they are all hidden weapons in the bodies of your people in the mortal world. They are the so-called aptitude. Hestia sighed. Unlike us gods who are fated to be eternally unchanging since birth, the people of the mortal realm are easily changed. Even so, there are more factors called possibilities hidden in your bodies, and those are existences that even us gods could not fully comprehend. That is why what we can do is to turn the possibilities in your bodies into your EXP through your subsequent experiences and accumulations, allowing you to change, evolve, or even become dispirited and change your appearance. Just like seeds buried in the soil, different outcomes would blossom according to the environment. In other words, different people like you. You have to remember that what we provide is definitely not power, but an accelerator, Hestia said solemnly. If you're looking forward to receiving my favor to immediately obtain a powerful strength, that's absolutely impossible. After you receive the favor, your strength will not change at all. Only in the following days can you continue to increase your own experiences and experience. Through this favor, we can draw out those experiences and turn them into nourishment, allowing you to obtain rapid growth. The so-called favor is this kind of strength. Hearing this, Noah finally understood why the people who received the grace were divided into different levels. It was because they did not obtain power the moment they received the grace. Instead, they continued to train themselves in the following days, allowing their grace to draw out the power in their bodies and make them stronger. Since the grace drew out the possibilities in the body instead of directly bestowing power, naturally, people with good aptitude would be able to obtain more power and become stronger than others. Therefore, there was a distinction between levels. Draw out our possibilities along with our experiences and experiences. Noah's tightly knitted brows slowly relaxed. Is this the power called grace? That's right. We call your experiences and experiences experience points. Hestia smiled. That smile was quite lovely and beautiful. That is your own history. What we, the gods, do is to draw out these experiences buried in your history and turn them into your nourishment to promote your growth. For example, if you train your arm strength, then I can draw out an experience called train your arm strength from your life experience, so that your arm strength that would have taken a long time to improve can be improved in a short period of time. That's all. Then why can't I increase my strength when I receive the grace? Noah asked suspiciously again. I used to train a lot, so I should be able to draw out those experience points, right? No, we can only draw out the experience points after you receive the grace. Hestia shook her head. With these experience points, your basic abilities can be improved. Basic abilities? Noah's tone became doubtful again. What were these basic abilities? You really don't know anything. Hestia pouted. The so-called basic abilities refer to the values of strength, durability, dexterity, agility, and magic. When we engrave the grace on your body, the power we draw out from your body will be systematized into these 5 values, and your abilities in those 5 values will be improved. For example, if you use your arm strength, then I can draw out this experience and increase your strength. The more frequently you use your arm strength, the more the value will increase, Hestia explained with assurance. The value of each basic ability is further subdivided into S, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. From high to low, it represents the level of the ability. The higher the level, the more your ability will be strengthened. That's it. Of course, the most important thing is still the level, Hestia emphasized. The level of the basic ability is one thing, and the level is another. As long as the level is increased by one level, it will be strengthened in addition to the basic ability. It is more appropriate to use the word evolution to describe it. There is a ridiculous power gap between LV1 and LV2, let alone above that, do you understand? Hearing this, Noah blinked his eyes. The more he listened, the more this so-called grace sounded like a game. However, Noah did understand that this so-called grace was not some kind of power that could be obtained immediately, but a simple accelerator. That is to say, the power obtained by those who received the grace was not bestowed by the gods, but hidden in their bodies, a possibility that could not be discovered. God's grace was only a way to draw out these hidden forces. Take off the clothes on your upper body. Hestia patted the chair next to her. I will use the sacred characters used by the gods as a medium and engrave them on your body. In the future, that will be your grace. Noah nodded, took off his knee-length coat, then took off his clothes and sat in front of Hestia. Hestia immediately bit her finger and dripped a drop of blood on Noah's back. Splash. The red blood was like a dewdrop falling into the water, causing a splash. Hum. At this moment, Noah felt it. A cool, spring-like air penetrated into his body and suddenly melted. In that instant, Noah's mana source that had been constantly absorbing the generated mana trembled all of a sudden, pulling a wisp of the cool, spring-like air into the pitch-black void. Then, the magic power stored in Noah's magic source boiled and turned into the cool energy. Chapter 830. Hum. As the dark and hollow mana source trembled, the originally vast and boundless mana in it began to tumble and boil violently, turning into the energy of Hestia's drop of God's blood. The sudden change caught Noah off guard, causing his expression to change slightly. Hestia, who had dripped the god's blood on Noah's back, seemed to have noticed Noah's abnormality and spoke while sucking on her wounded finger. What's wrong? No. Noah shook his head. Nothing. Despite saying that, Noah's mind immediately sank into his body to explore the source of his manna. After confirming it repeatedly, Noah had to admit it. The manna stored in the manna source had indeed turned into the same energy as Hestia's drop of God's blood. Not only that, even the manna that was constantly being generated and swallowed by the dark and hollow manna source had turned into the same energy in an instant. It was as if the manna source could no longer contain manna. This change made Noah's heart more or less uneasy. After all, many of Noah's means required manna to be used. Now, all the manna in his body had been transformed into another energy under the effect of the manna source, which had a great impact on Noah. Even the gate of Babylon required manna to be opened. Noah's magic tricks and spells also required the use of magic power. What's more, when using authority, it also consumed manna. Without manna, Noah's strength would plummet to the point where he would not be able to defeat a slightly stronger servant, let alone a god that he had once killed. Before arriving in this world, Noah felt that there seemed to be other secrets in his manna source. He didn't expect the secret to be like this. After absorbing other types of energy, would the stored manna be transformed into that type of energy? No, that's not right. Noah subconsciously felt that something was wrong and secretly muttered to himself in his heart. If my manna source can really transform the stored manna into that type of energy after absorbing other types of energy, then when the manna source absorbs the manna I generate, it should turn back into manna, right? Thinking of this, Noah immersed his mind more in the manna source in his body and had an idea. Let's give it a try. After secretly saying this in his heart, Noah's mind moved. The manna source that was originally filled with inexplicable energy suddenly trembled again. The unknown energy inside suddenly tumbled and boiled violently like the previous manna. It didn't take long for the unknown energy to transform into magic power. Aware of this change, Noah couldn't help being overjoyed. Yes, the secret of the manna source isn't that it can convert the stored manna into other types of energy after absorbing other types of energy. Instead, it's like a converter that can convert manna and absorbed energy into each other. In order to verify this idea, Noah kept changing the energy in the manna source. One moment it was manna. Another moment it was the unknown energy. According to Noah's intention, these two types of energy could be transformed into each other at will without the slightest stagnation and obstruction. For the time being, I'll name the energy transformed from Hestia's divine blood as divine power. Noah silently observed the changes in the manna source. After absorbing a trace of divine power, the manna source seems to remember the form of divine power and can transform manna into divine power at will, and vice versa. This is the hidden effect of the manna source, right? Noah was suddenly immersed in the changes in his manna source. At the same time, Hestia also started her work. Clang! After dripping the divine blood on Noah's back, a circle of ripples immediately appeared on Noah's back, and then a faint blue light bloomed and covered his back. In the faint blue light, Hestia gently tapped on it with her finger. Rows of obscure mysterious characters suddenly appeared out of thin air in the faint blue light, as if they were automatically arranged, rotating back and forth, undulating with each other. Not long after, these obscure and mysterious characters arranged themselves into a sequence, like a projection, like a template, and presented themselves in front of Hestia. At the same time, a complex pattern began to appear on Noah's back. It was a pattern that looked like both a furnace and a torch. Dense lines of small characters were distributed around the pattern, as if they were embellishing the pattern that looked like both a furnace and a torch, giving the pattern a mysterious color out of thin air. Those small characters were the sacred characters used by the gods in this world. Using divine blood as a medium, the sacred characters were engraved on the bodies of the people in the mortal world, forming a favor, and continuously exploring the possibilities in the body of the person who received this favor. At this time, the existence named Noah Dole became a book. A blank book. What Hestia needed to do was to write down the path, experiences, and stories that Noah had gone through in this book, and present all the experiences that Noah had gained in the following life in black and white form. People called it ability value. It was divided into 4 aspects: basic ability, level, magic, and skills. These were all the enhancements that could be given to Noah. Therefore, Hestia almost immediately looked at Noah's ability value. Noah Dole LV. 1 Strength, I, 0, Durability, I, 0, Dexterity, I, 0, Agility, I, 0, Magic Power, I, 0, Magic, Skills, Protection from the World, Permanent Skills. Equivalent to luck. Events that had a direct relationship with luck would eventually lead to the most favorable results. Because it needed to be strengthened in the following tempering, each item of the basic ability was the lowest level, I level, and the level was also the lowest level, LV1. Even if Noah was strong now, these values needed to be developed in the future. It was similar to the ability of strengthening, and it had no direct relationship with Noah's own strength. Next was magic and skills. This world also had magic. However, it was not magic in the broad sense of the moon world, but the kind of magic referred to in Western fantasy, which was similar to the magic in the world of fairy tale. Originally, the magic in this world was only a power that could be used by a certain race. For example, the elves, who were favored by nature, were called a magic race. However, the favor of God could explore any possibilities in the human body, so that anyone could learn magic. However, the number of magic that could be explored through the favor was fixed. At least 1. At most 3. Generally, people who received the favor could only use one type of magic. If someone could use 2 types of magic, then this alone could make that person a delicious cake among the family members. How many types of magic a person could obtain depended on the empty column in the ability value. As for skills, they were special effects that could be brought under certain conditions, or they could strengthen one's own abilities. Different from magic, there was no limit to the number of skills. The similarity between magic and magic was that the discovery of both was related to the experience points that the person obtained. In addition, it was also related to one's nature or interest. If one's basic abilities and levels were the same at the very beginning, then magic and skills were powers that could be discovered at the very beginning. Although Noah did not discover any magic, there were 3 empty columns, which meant that Noah could obtain a maximum of 3 types of magic in the future. In the skill column, the protection from the world skill made Hestia completely stunned. What? What does this mean? Noah, who was studying his own mana source, heard Hestia's voice and suddenly came back to his senses. He looked at Hestia behind him. What's wrong? Hearing this, Hestia didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at Noah with a strange expression. It was as if she was looking at an extremely rare thing, which made Noah a little scared. Chapter 831. Noah Dole LV. 1 Strength, I, 0, Durability, I, 0, Dexterity, I, 0, Agility, I, 0, Magic Power, I, 0, Magic, Skill Frowny Face Protection from the World, Permanent Skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. Because the ability values engraved on the back were all written in the sacred text, under normal circumstances, if one wanted to know what their ability value was, they would have to ask God to translate it and copy it down. Only then would they know. Noah didn't even know much of this world's language, let alone the divine script that was commonly used among the gods. Therefore, he could only ask Hesti to translate the ability value and copy it down on a piece of paper to know what his ability value was. After a while, Noah finally recognized the ability value on the piece of paper that Hesti had copied down. He was speechless. Protection from the world. Permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. Didn't that mean that in the future, Noah would truly become a lucky person with good luck? Using the ability value of a servant to express it, with this, protection from the world, skill, Noah's luck should be considered to have reached X level, right? Even if it wasn't X, it should be at least A++ level. The most important thing was that a person's ability and magic were generally determined by the experience value, wishes, and nature of the person. Noah had just engraved grace, so naturally, he didn't have any experience value. In other words, he didn't experience anything that could cause this skill to appear. Then, the appearance of this skill was completely due to Noah's wish or nature. That's why Hasty looked at Noah with such a strange expression. Wish related to luck. Ability to attract, protection from the world. No matter which one it was, there was something that made Hasty feel strange. On the other hand, Noah wasn't surprised that he had such a skill. After all, Gaia and Alea had said that the world would always stand on Noah's side. In that case, it was excusable that the skill, protection from the world, was born from this essence. Noah could only grumpily smile at Hestia, who was staring at him with her cute big round eyes. He then pointed at a place on his ability index. Hasty, what's the 0 behind the basic ability? Because he had just engraved, Grace, Noah's basic ability, whether it was strength, durability, dexterity, agility, or magic, they were all at the lowest I level. Then, after the I, what is the 0 in brackets? That's proficiency, Hestia snapped, still staring at Noah. Every basic ability has 10 stages. After meeting a certain level of proficiency, it can be upgraded. You haven't done any training yet, so it's naturally 0 at the beginning. To be specific, if Noah wanted to upgrade his basic ability from I to H, he had to get a certain level of proficiency. The maximum proficiency value for each stage was 99. I, 0 99 H, 100 199 G, 200 299 F, 300 399 E, 400 499 D, 500 599 C, 600 699 B, 700 799 A, 800 899 S, 900 999 inches. Other words, when Noah's basic ability proficiency reached 100, it could be upgraded to H stage. If it reached the highest 900, it could be upgraded to S stage. According to the current proficiency estimate, the proficiency limit of basic ability was 999. Strength, durability, dexterity, and magic. Among the 5 basic abilities, the more frequently Noah used his ability, the more his proficiency would increase. The closer it was to the highest value of 999, which was the upper limit of S stage, the slower the growth rate would be. According to what you said, you already have a certain combat ability. Then, at least when you reach LV1, your improvement speed should be very fast. Speaking of this, Hestia was a little happy again. Moreover, the number of spells you can use is the highest 3, your future achievements will be extraordinary. How can a person with a sword win against an opponent who can set off a sea of fire? Therefore, the difference between having magic and not having magic is simply too big. If there is magic, there is no problem to become the enemy of 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 people. The existence of magic is so important. At least, this is the case in this world. In other words, magic is a person's biggest trump card. It is a killer skill that can reverse the situation. Noah could also understand this point. Take Yen Feng and Chili for example. That priest's close combat power was definitely not much worse than Noah's, but he was bombarded by Noah's magic cannon to the point that he could not fight back at all. The difference was that one used cold weapons, and the other used hot weapons. Then, who won and who lost was obvious at a glance. Our family will start from here. The expression on Hestia's face slowly melted, and she put on the most gentle and most holy smile since Noah saw her. And you are the backbone of this family called Hestia. Looking at Hestia's holy smile that was no different from the name of the goddess, Noah couldn't help but smile. Family? Maybe, it's not bad, as mentioned before, even if it was a clan tribe, there were all kinds of different natures. Some families' main activity was to explore the dungeon. Some families' main activity was to do business. Some families would sell equipment and weapons. Some family would also engage in farming, and there was everything that one could think of. After forming the family, Hestia asked Noah for his opinion and let him decide what kind of existence the family should have. Noah didn't hesitate to choose to explore the dungeon. In a big labyrinth that could produce monsters, Noah would definitely not lack opponents to fight. In this way, Noah's ability could be improved. In other words, Noah decided to become an adventurer. Hestia's family currently only had one member, Noah. Only when there were members could a family of the gods be established. Whether it was establishing a family or becoming an adventurer, it was necessary to register in the guild that managed Eulalie. So, under Hestia's lead, Noah came to the guild headquarters. It was a tall building similar to a temple. In the hall on the first floor of such a building, there was a flow of people that was not inferior to the people coming and going on the street outside. At this time, Hestia had already gone to apply for the establishment of a family. She patted her full upper body and skipped to help Noah to become an adventurer. Noah was left alone in the guild hall. In such a situation, Noah didn't feel good at all. There was no other reason. It was because Noah was standing in front of a notice board, looking at the most conspicuous parchment pasted in the middle of the notice board. The corners of his mouth twitched constantly. It was a piece of parchment with a portrait drawn in the form of a sketch. Below the portrait were words written all over it. At the bottom of the parchment, in a very conspicuous way, there was a bounty of 1,000,000 yen. There was no need to think about what this parchment meant. Sensing the scorching gazes from the guild hall that pierced into his back, even Noah felt a surge of anger in his heart. Loki, I'll remember this. As soon as this sentence fell, there was a commotion at the door of the guild hall. Under the lead of a group of adventurers, the goddess with a red ponytail quickly rushed into the hall. Looking around, she immediately saw Noah standing in front of the notice board, and her face was overjoyed. Found you. The one who came was Loki. Loki, who put a bounty on Noah and pushed him into the fire pit. So, Noah smiled. Loki actually delivered himself to the door. Chapter 832. Found you. As soon as he rushed into the guild hall, Loki shouted and immediately rushed in the direction of Noah. Come back to Loki's clan with me. Little guy. Hearing this voice, Noah, who was standing in front of the notice board with his back to the entrance of the guild hall, didn't even move. When Loki was only 1 meter away from him, he suddenly turned around and stretched out one of his feet. Because the forward momentum was too fierce, Loki, without any accident, pounced on Noah's original position. Looking at the notice board that was getting closer and closer to his face was shocked. Just as he wanted to stop, his foot fiercely turned on Noah's outstretched foot. Thus, Loki's entire body was suspended in the air and pounced forward. Bang! After a loud collision, Loki, who had smashed into the notice board with his arms and legs spread out, couldn't even make a sound. He slowly slid down. Seeing this scene, many people in the guild hall couldn't help but cover their faces. It was obvious that they felt the pain just by looking at it. Only Noah, looking at Loki, who slid on the ground like a corpse, revealed an emotionless smile. You actually dare to appear in front of me? Loki's entire body trembled. He raised his head with a stiff neck like a clockwork. Looking at Noah's unfriendly expression, he covered his red nose and laughed dryly. Don't be so hostile. This time, I'm not here to fight with you. I have no ill intentions. No ill intentions? Noah pointed at the bounty list posted in the most conspicuous place in the center of the notice board, the corner of his eyes twitching as he looked at Loki. No ill intentions? If you don't have ill intentions, why did you directly put me up for a bounty? Then what are you going to do when you have ill intentions? Perhaps it was because he felt that the current Noah was too dangerous. Loki even broke out in a cold sweat. At this time, there was another commotion at the entrance of the guild. Of course, this time, it wasn't because someone was causing trouble, but because someone had come in and made everyone in the guild hall exclaim in surprise. A long golden hair that reached his waist swayed like a radiance. His expression was calm and steady from beginning to end. There was an atmosphere that seemed to make the surroundings fall into silence. Just like that, the girl walked into the guild hall without anyone noticing, entering everyone's field of vision. Everyone in the guild hall subconsciously held their breaths as they gazed at this young girl who was as beautiful as a goddess. In fact, she was even more beautiful than most goddesses. It was as if they were afraid of disturbing her beauty, causing the originally noisy guild hall to revert to its original state of silence. Under such circumstances, the two Amazons with healthy wheat-colored skin following behind the girl were robbed of all the spotlight, and they did not attract much attention. Where is it? Didn't you say that you found him? Even if you found it, why are you so excited? Tiona's excited voice and Tiona's somewhat helpless voice finally woke up the people in the hall who had their consciousnesses taken away by AIC. The silence that pervaded the air was successfully broken. On the other hand, AI had already turned her gaze in the direction of the notice board and met Noah's deep, pitch-black eyes. Then, AI's gaze never moved away again. Being stared at by AI's clear, emotionless eyes, Noah raised his brows. Even though there was no emotion in AIC's eyes, Noah could tell that the girl seemed to care a lot about him. Could it be that the previous battle made this girl named AI feel unreconciled? Being forced to retreat by someone who didn't accept the favor should be very uncomfortable for those conceited people, right? Moreover, from Hastia's surprised look after hearing that Noah forced AI to retreat, it could be seen that AI seemed to be quite famous among the spawns. Then, the possibility of this was even greater. Of course, Noah didn't know that he guessed wrong. But that was something that would only be mentioned in the future. Ah. Tiona finally saw Noah standing in front of the notice board. Her eyes glinted as she pointed in Noah's direction and shook Tiona's hand. There. It's really him. Tiona stood up in surprise. He actually ran straight to the guild headquarters. Isn't this telling everyone that he's here? On the other hand, Loki seemed to have seen his savior as he hurriedly yelled. Hurry up and save me. Upon hearing that, Noah almost choked on his breath. Noah hadn't done anything to this crazy goddess yet, right? In the end, with Loki's yelling, didn't it seem like Noah was going to do something to her? This caused the anger in Noah's heart to surge to his face, and his face darkened. Do you really want to die? Rocky's body trembled once more. He shut his mouth and didn't dare to say another word. Seizing this opportunity, the younger sister of the pair of Amazon sisters, the lively and cheerful Tiona, rushed over. When Noah thought that she was going to do something, she suddenly hugged Noah's arm. Caught you. Little big brother. Little big brother? When did I become this young lady's big brother? Also, why did she add the word little? While Noah was at a loss, his other hand suddenly felt restrained by a soft touch. You can't escape this time. The elder of the Amazon sisters, the calmer Tiona, hugged Noah's other hand and smiled sweetly. Well, I'm also wondering why you can force AIC to retreat without receiving the favor, so come to our clan tribe. After hearing Tiona's words, AIC, who was walking over, stared at Noah with a more urgent gaze, making Noah feel more and more that this girl was unwilling to accept the previous battle. Noah, who was being hugged tightly by a beautiful girl on both sides and had his hands restrained, was almost rendered speechless by this sudden development. By the time Noah realized what he should do, an exasperated and childish voice rang out. You. We. Here. Do. What? Do. Ah. With such a loud shout, Hestia rushed over from the other side of the guild, her delicate face full of anger. Let go of that man. He's mine. Noah, who was pincered by the Amazon sisters, almost fell down. The dark, emotional gazes from the surrounding people told Noah this. First, there was the glorious deed of breaking into the bath of the goddesses. Then, there was the situation where he was surrounded by a group of beautiful girls. Then, there was Hestia's words that made people think of. After tomorrow, Noah would become completely famous. However, at this time, Loki, who had been lying on the ground pretending to be dead, suddenly jumped up and toward the angry Hestia without hesitation. Clank. When the crisp sound rang out, Hestia and Loki simultaneously covered their heads with their hands and squatted on the ground with tears in their eyes as they cried out in pain. Seeing this, Noah finally couldn't help but yell. "Are you here to make fun of me?" "Noah." Hestia raised her head, still covering her red forehead, and looked at Noah with tears in her eyes. Her appearance was so cute that a large group of adventurers around her almost killed them. "Why are you with a woman from Loki's family? Are you going to abandon me? I'm begging you." Noah felt like his chest was suffocating. "Don't use words that can easily cause misunderstandings, okay?" However, Noah's words were drowned out by a burst of laughter that sounded like it was trying to be brave. "I knew it was you as soon as I heard your voice, Shorty." Loki, who was also covering his forehead, stared at Hestia with tears in his eyes and burst out laughing like he was about to cry. "Aren't you hiding in Hephaestus' house like a parasite? Did Hephaestus finally kick you out because she couldn't stand it anymore?" "Coo." Hestia also put on a fake smile as if she had been stabbed in the chest by a sword. "What a pity, Hephaestus isn't as petty as you." After that, Hestia and Loki looked at each other with sparks in their eyes. Chapter 833. Crackle, crackle. Similar electric currents seemed to vibrate from the gazes of Hestia and Loki. Of course, there wasn't really such a sound. It was just that Hestia and Loki couldn't wait to push their foreheads against each other with bitter looks on their faces. It was as if there were electric sparks flying from the gazes of the two goddesses. From the very beginning, when Noah first met Hestia, he had guessed that Hestia and Loki actually didn't get along well. Now that he saw with his own eyes that they couldn't wait to devour each other, Noah was even more certain of his guess. The relationship between Hestia and Loki was definitely worse than Noah had imagined. Even Aes, Tiona, and Tione looked at each other in dismay. They didn't seem to know why Hestia and their over-god were at loggerheads as soon as they met. However, in the next second, Hestia cast her gaze on Tiona and Tione, who were tightly holding onto one of Noah's arms. Her freely hanging ponytails immediately stood up. "You Amazons over there, how long are you going to hold on to my Noah?" Hestia said as she stepped forward. Tiona and Tione, who couldn't react in time, separated themselves from Noah and stood in front of Noah with their arms spread open like hens protecting their chicks. They glared fiercely at Aes and the others. "I'm telling you, Noah has now joined my family tribe. You're not allowed to have any ideas about him anymore." Both Tiona and Tione were stunned when they heard this. Not to mention Tiona and Tione, even AIC was taken aback. She couldn't react to the situation at all. Only Loki, who had been squinting his eyes as if he had heard some bad news, jumped up and looked at Noah in disbelief. "You've joined the family tribe of this poor shorty?" Noah, who no longer had the strength to play with these girls, could only nod tiredly, which made the corner of Loki's mouth twitch. "You could have chosen anyone else's family, but you just had to choose this poor shorty's family. Do you know that not only does this shorty's family not have a single person, they don't even have a single cent? Right now, they're living in someone else's house like a rice worm?" Loki looked at Noah as if he was looking at an unprecedented fool. "If you follow this shorty, you may not even have a place to stay. Do you want to end up starving to death on the streets? What are you so proud of?" Hearing Loki's words, before Noah could say anything, Hestia flew into a rage. "If it weren't for the fact that I only came to the lower realm recently, my clan would definitely be stronger than you. Idiot." Loki bent down and put his face right in front of Hestia's face. "In the lower realm, there's a saying of, first come, first served. Who told you not to come before? Now, you can only be a short and poor goddess." Being mocked by Loki, Hestia's face was distorted, but she couldn't say a word to refute. After all, what Loki said was basically the truth. See? You can't refute it, can you?" Loki smiled proudly and looked at Noah. "I advise you, if you want to regret it, it's best to do it now. Have you accepted this shorty's favor? If not, it's not too late to regret it now. Noah won't go back on his word." Hestia glared at Loki. Besides, he has already accepted my favor. Hearing this, AIC, who was at the side, suddenly spoke. Then, before he joined your clan, did he really not accept any favor? AIC's sudden words not only stunned Hestia, but also Loki and the rest of the group. It couldn't be helped. Although AIC's appearance was comparable to that of a goddess, she had always been silent and taciturn. Once someone's attention was focused on something else, it was easy to overlook her existence. If AIC didn't speak, Hestia and the others would probably forget that she was here. This caused Hestia to forget to answer for a moment. Only then did Loki react. His narrowed eyes opened slightly, revealing a pair of pupils filled with wisdom. I also want to ask you, Shorty, did this little guy not accept any favor before? I know what you're thinking, but I can tell you clearly that the favor on Noah's body was engraved by me, and it was not long ago. Hestia crossed her arms. I heard that before that, your clan's swordswoman couldn't do anything to my clan's Noah, right? Noah and AIC's eyes met again. However, Noah only glanced at her for a moment before moving away. AIC kept looking at Noah as if she was in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. I don't believe it. Loki's eyes flickered as he looked at Noah provocatively. I suspect that you have already received the favor. If your favor was engraved just now, then your basic ability value should all be at the lowest I level, and your proficiency should be 0. If you really just received the favor, then let me see your ability value. After saying that, Loki, Ace, Tiona, and Tiona turned their gazes to Noah and stared at him without letting him go. Damn you, Loki. Hestia was furious. Do you think I would lie? Loki ignored Hestia and kept staring at Noah with a provocative smile on his face. In this regard, Noah sighed. Are you testing me? Anyway, you don't want to hide it, do you? Loki shrugged. Then what's wrong with letting me see it? Anyway, you saw me naked in the bathhouse, didn't you? Noah was immediately speechless. Although it was not intentional, this matter was indeed Noah's fault. At that moment, Tiona also joined in the fun. Little brother. Just let us see it. How about we also let you see our bodies? The corner of Noah's mouth began to twitch again. The people of the Amazon race were not reserved. The people of this race were more open than the people of any country Noah had ever seen. It was said that once they took a fancy to a man, they would think of ways to bring him home at all costs. What was done, which was more valiant than anything else. Therefore, Noah did not doubt that once he said yes, the two girls in front of him would immediately do as he said. Even AIC stared at Noah without saying a word, and Noah could not stand it anymore. Wait. Hestia protested. An adventurer's ability value is a secret that belongs to the adventurer and his clan. There is no obligation to disclose it to the public. Even guilds can only disclose the adventurer's level and dungeon activity records to the extent that it does not affect the clan. As a role model for others, what right do you have to ask us to let you see it? This time, it was Loki's turn to be speechless. Forget it, Hestia, there's nothing to hide. Noah patted Hestia's shoulder and looked at Loki. Anyway, my basic ability is still in its initial state, so it doesn't matter if I let you see it. Consider it as paying for the bathhouse incident. In the future, you are not allowed to bring this up again, or else don't blame me for being rude. No problem. Loki agreed without hesitation. Not only me, but I'll also make sure that the other goddesses that you saw won't trouble you anymore. Then we'll be even, right? Oh. Noah was a little surprised. You can make the other goddesses shut up. Do you think I'm that poor shorty? Loki said proudly. My clan is one of the 2 strongest clans in the whole of Eulalia. If I say so, the other goddesses will respect me. Noah nodded indifferently, but he felt a little relieved that this matter had come to an end. At least, he did not have to worry about things like being wanted in the future. Noah still cared about his reputation. 5 minutes later, Noah left the guild hall with Hestia, who was very proud of herself. Loki and the others looked at Noah's back as he left, as if they could recall the ability value that they had just seen. They fell into silence. It's true. Tiona muttered to herself. That little brother really just received the favor, that's right. Tiona nodded. Magic is empty. Although there is a skill, and it's such a strange skill, it doesn't have the effect of hiding the ability value. Since it's not a skill or magic effect, then I really haven't heard of any way to hide the true value of the ability value. That ability value can't be fake. 3 empty magic slots, a skill that can summon luck, and the power to force Aslan away without receiving the favor. Loki's eyes became brighter and brighter, and in the end, it became annoyance. Damn it, why would such a rare little fellow be kidnapped by that poor shorty? AIC, who was left behind, didn't say anything. Her eyes flickered as she watched Noah leave. After his back disappeared, she murmured, "What a pity. What should I do to be like him?" Chapter 834. If one were to look down from the top, the city called Eulalia was like a cake that had been cut into 8 equal portions. It was circular in shape, with 8 streets radiating from the center of the city, extending from 8 directions to the city walls surrounding the city. Didn't it look like a cake that had been cut into 8 equal portions? According to the directions of the streets, Eulalia was divided into 8 main streets, namely East Street, West Street, South Street, North Street, Northeast Street, Southeast Street, Northwest Street, and Southwest Street. There were a total of 8 main streets. The location of the Mistress of Plenty that Noah had visited was on the side of the West Street. Meanwhile, the main street in front of the guild headquarters was the Northwest Main Street. Because the guild headquarters was located there, most of the pedestrians on this street were adventurers. After all, the guild was the organization that managed the entirety of Olalai and the dungeons. Exploring the dungeons in Olalai required the guild to go through all sorts of procedures and seek assistance from the guild. As long as one was an adventurer who explored the dungeons as a profession, they would frequently visit the guild. Therefore, there were many adventurers on the Northwest Main Street. Because of this, on this busy street, there were many shops that sold to adventurers. There were weapon shops that sold weapons and armor, potion shops that sold recovery potions, item shops that sold all kinds of items, and taverns that served as entertainment for adventurers. After leaving the guild headquarters, Hestia mysteriously held Noah's hand and led him in a certain direction. In Hestia's opinion, Noah, who had just joined her clan, was like her child. Therefore, when she held Noah's hand, she didn't feel that it was inappropriate at all. It was as if she was taking care of a child. However, from an outsider's point of view, Hestia, who was holding Noah's hand, looked like a child instead. She was a very naughty child who kept pulling her big brother, Noah, and running forward. It was a heartwarming scene that made people smile. However, when the passers-by caught sight of Hestia's breasts, the atmosphere turned a little lecherous. It had to be said that Hestia's figure was indeed very attractive. However, he didn't have the slightest bit of self-awareness. Noah could only say helplessly, "Where are you taking me, Hestia?" "Let's go to Hephaestus." Hestia replied without turning her head, but she did not forget to explain to Noah. "Hephaestus is the divine friend that I am currently staying with. She is also the god of forging who is known as the fire god in the heavenly realm. Her clan tribe also uses forging as their main business. The works created by the members under her have even become a brand. That is not only a clan tribe that is very famous in Eulalia, but also in the world." "Hephaestus?" Noah scratched his cheek. "Is it the divine friend you mentioned before who is about to kick you out of the door because he's reaching his limit?" Hestia's happy expression withered, but she still said stubbornly, "It's okay. We won't be staying here for long anyway. With your ability, Noah, we will be able to earn enough money to buy a house very soon." "Wait a minute," Noah said in a strange voice. "Are you going to take me to your divine friend's place to live? What's wrong? Don't you like it?" Hestia turned around and asked in confusion. But we can only live there temporarily, right? Of course not. Noah stopped and pulled Hestia, who was holding his hand, to stop as well. He looked at Hestia with an annoyed expression. We can find a house by ourselves now. Why do we have to wait until later? Huh? Hestia was startled and asked with some uncertainty. But didn't you say that you just came to Eulalia and don't have the common currency here? I just came to Eulalia and don't have the common currency here, but it doesn't mean that I don't have money. Noah sighed. Although I don't have the currency here, I have gold, gems, and other precious items. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange them for money, right? Hestia opened her eyes wide and looked at Noah in a daze. After a while, she spoke as if she had just woken up from a dream. In other words, we actually have money? Noah nodded heavily. Hestia asked with an expectant look on her face. How much do you have? How much? Noah did not know how to answer. It was not because there was too little, but because there was too much. There were mountains of gold and silver treasures piled up in the gate of Babylon. Who knew how much there was? Moreover, Noah's gate of Babylon had 3 functions: automatic recovery, automatic repair, and automatic replenishment. Among them, automatic replenishment was the function that could replenish the consumed items after a period of time. Noah found that if he used up all the gold and silver treasures, after a period of time, the amount of gold and silver treasures in the treasure vault would be restored to the original amount. Obviously, the gold and silver treasures that were consumed could also be replenished. So, the question of how much was still important. Therefore, Noah could only answer. It's definitely enough to buy a house, no matter how big the house is. Hestia blinked her eyes, but her eyes were getting brighter and brighter. Her young face gradually became excited. In the end, Hestia threw herself on Noah. Noah. You're really my lucky star. Being hugged by Hasti, Noah immediately felt something that could easily change shape in front of him. It was a wonderful feeling that would make any man howl in joy. Unable to hide his hesitation, Noah could only use his hands and feet to pull Hestia off his body like an octopus. Can you not hug me so easily? We're on the street. Well, it doesn't matter. As long as it's Noah, I'm fine with it. Hestia did not realize that she had said something that would make people think of Pian Pian. She happily pulled Noah and ran forward. It's so good to have my own house. Let's see who dares to call me a poor shorty in the future. Does having a house mean you're not poor? Besides, the house is not yours. Even if you're not a poor god, you're still a shorty. Noah didn't say anything similar to the above. He just said that, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. So, where are you going to take me now? Let's go to Hephaestus. Hestia gave the same answer as before, but with a different reason. I want to introduce my favorite child to my best friend. I also want to say goodbye to Hephaestus. After all, she has been taking care of me for a long time. Noah had a helpless expression on his face when he heard Hestia's words, but he did not know when the corners of his mouth had started to rise. This Lolita goddess was not only cute in appearance, but also in personality. Under Hestia's lead, Noah came to a blacksmith shop on Northwest Main Street. It was a large blacksmith shop. At the entrance of the shop, there was a plaque with the words, Kappa Phi Alpha Iota Sigma Tau Omicron C. Although Noah did not recognize the words on the plaque, he knew that they were sacred characters. Sacred characters as a plaque? That should be the brand that Hestia mentioned, right? Hestia pushed the door open and entered. Hephaestus. I'm back. When Hestia's voice sounded, Noah followed her into the large blacksmith shop. Then, Noah saw her. A woman with bright red short hair and an eye patch on her right eye was standing in front of Hestia. She looked like she was in her 20s. Her face was stern, and her tone was very unfriendly. Did you go to the bookstore to read again? The smile on Hestia's face suddenly froze, and she became a little timid. Hephaestus, are you angry? Alas. The goddess called Hephaestus by Hestia's side. Rather than saying that he was angry, it would be more accurate to say that he was worried. Chapter 8:35. Looking at Hestia, who was obediently standing in front of her with her head lowered and listening to her instructions, Hephaestus' tone was stern and a little exasperated. I say, Hestia, although we do have an ill-fated relationship, I let you stay with me temporarily because you just came to this world. But after you came here, you didn't form a clan or go out to work. Instead, you hid in your room all day long and went to the bookstore to read books. If you continue like this, I will really kick you out. Hephaestus had said this many times, and Hestia had heard it many times, so she was already familiar with it. In the beginning, Hephaestus just wanted to scare Hestia so that she wouldn't be so unmotivated. However, as the number of times increased, Hestia didn't seem to have any remorse at all. Hephaestus really began to consider carrying out her orders. She believed that if this continued, it wouldn't be long before Hestia would be kicked out by the angry Hephaestus. Fortunately, Hestia was indeed lucky today. This time, I'm not idling around, Hephaestus, Hestia hurriedly said. I've already registered with the guild and formed a clan, Hestia said. Formed a clan? Hephaestus' stern face suddenly froze for a moment, and then she was surprised. In other words, you've already found a child to join your clan? A clan of a god could only be formed if there were members. Even if there was only one, as long as there was one member, then the clan tribe could be established. On the other hand, if the number of clan members dropped to 0, then even if the main god didn't want to disband the clan, the guild would cancel the registration of the clan of the god. Since Hestia had formed a clan, it meant that she had already found a member. When Hephaestus first said that she would kick Hestia out of the house, Hestia also tried to look for a member of her clan. However, Hestia had just descended to this world and didn't have much fame. Secondly, Hestia didn't have a good family background. She couldn't even provide a place to live, let alone food and clothing. Therefore, who would be willing to join Hestia's clan? After all, the grace of a god was the same, and there was no difference. Under such circumstances, if one were to choose to join a clan tribe, then naturally, anyone would first choose to join a clan tribe that was famous and powerful. For someone like Hestia who was not famous, had no strength, and had no family background, it wasn't that it was impossible to find a clan member, but it was very difficult. Therefore, even the old owner of the bookstore who took good care of Hestia was not willing to join Hestia's family clan. Now that Hestia suddenly said that she had formed a clan, Hephaestus, it really surprised Hephaestus. Only then did Hephaestus notice Noah standing at the door. At this time, Noah was looking at the well-made weapons placed in the glass cabinets in the shop. It seemed that he didn't intend to disturb Hestia and Hephaestus. When she saw Noah, Hephaestus thought of something and frowned. Isn't he the pervert who went to the bathhouse to peep on Loki's wanted list? It seemed that Noah was really famous. The first member of your clan wouldn't be him, right? Hephaestus's face, which had just relaxed, tightened again because of distress. Are you sure you won't be deceived? Hephaestus was a typical example of over-worrying. She was worried that Hestia would be mediocre, and when Hestia found something to do, she was worried that she would be deceived. She was like Hestia's mother or sister. However, there was no other way. Noah did break into the bathing place dedicated to the goddesses and saw nearly half of the goddesses in Eulalia. If it weren't for the fact that Hephaestus wasn't there at the time, it wouldn't be as simple as being deceived. Of course not. Noah is definitely a good boy, Hestia was a little dissatisfied. No matter what, I'm still a god. I still have a good eye for people, right? That's true. Hephaestus loosened her frown. Since you said so yourself, then remember to take responsibility. Don't forget, that child will be your family in the future. Don't give him any trouble. I know, Hestia muttered. She turned her head and waved at Noah. Come on, Noah, Hestia muttered to herself before putting on a cheerful expression. Noah, come here quickly. Noah, who was looking at the equipment in the shop, came back to his senses and walked toward Hestia and Hephaestus. Hephaestus sized up Noah and nodded to Noah. "Your name is Noah, right?" "Noah Doria. That's my full name." Noah also quietly observed Hephaestus and then asked the question he was concerned about. "Did you, the god of smithing, make all the equipment here?" "Of course not," Hephaestus answered without any hesitation. "The equipment here are all the works of the children in my clan tribe." Noah finally understood. While Hestia and Hephaestus were talking, Noah had been looking at the equipment in the shop. Hestia had said that Hephaestus' family was one of the best smithing families in the world. Very few people in the world could surpass the products under her clan. In addition, the main god of the clan was Hephaestus, the god of forging. It was not strange that Noah would be interested in the equipment here. But how should he put it? Although the equipment here could be said to be excellent, it was not enough for Noah. After all, Noah had almost all the relics in the mid-moon world since ancient times. In terms of sharpness and precision, these equipment might be comparable to relics. However, the real power of relics lay in the endless variety of powerful abilities and effects. The equipment in Hephaestus' shop almost did not have the kind of unique abilities and effects that could be used as trump cards. There were only support effects that were similar to increasing basic abilities, increasing lethality, increasing resistance to heat, cold, and poison. Compared to relics, it was indeed not enough. If the equipment made by the famous heavenly realm divine blacksmith Hephaestus was like this, then Noah would be really disappointed. Therefore, in this shop, there was only one piece of equipment that could attract Noah's interest. It was a weapon that was placed alone in a glass cabinet in the shop. It looked like a small knife, but the body of the sword seemed to be burning. Noah felt a wave of magic from the weapon that seemed to be burning. It should not be an ordinary weapon that was only outstanding in sharpness and precision, right? Then, Noah pointed at the small knife. "What kind of weapon is that?" Hephaestus and Hephaestus looked over at the same time and then looked at each other. "That's a magic sword," Hephaestus explained. "To put it simply, it's a weapon that has the ability to release magic. It doesn't require chanting or any conditions to use it. It only takes a thought to use the magic attached to the weapon. That's the kind of weapon." Hearing that, Noah understood. Wasn't that the same weapon as the magical weapon in a fairy tale? Unfortunately, that was not the case. "That's not as convenient a weapon as you think," Hephaestus, who had been observing Noah, said. "Although it can release magic, the magic attached to it is not as powerful as the original. Also, there's the number of times it can be used. Once the number of times it can be used is used up, it will break. So, that's just a good replacement." Noah suddenly lost interest. Not only was the power not as powerful as the original, but there was also the number of times it could be used. That was not even a magical weapon, right? "You're planning to become an adventurer, right?" Hephaestus smiled. "Then, I'm looking forward to when you can patronize my shop." Noah smiled bitterly and nodded. Although he did not like it. Chapter 8:36. The sky gradually became brighter. The sun had not yet risen from the east and floated in the sky, but there were already some light screens in the sky, telling people that dawn had arrived. The clear and loud sound of birds echoed in the sky. The dewdrops on the leaves slowly fell, flickering with fluorescent light. Only in the morning, there was a trace of fresh cold air between heaven and earth, enveloping the perfect circular city. Maze City, Eulalie. In the era before the gods came, people called it the Ancient Era, and it had existed until now. It had been one of the most famous metropolises in the world. The reason why this metropolis was famous was very simple. It was because it was the only maze city in the world. Only in this metropolis there was an underground city, which attracted adventurers from all over the world. It was known as the center of the world. This was Eulalie. In the city surrounded by high city walls, the outer part of the city was mainly tall towers and high-rise buildings. The closer to the center, the lower the height of the buildings. In the center of this vast city, there was a gigantic tower that reached the sky. It was entirely white and gray in color. Looking around Eulalie, or even the whole world, it was possible to find a taller building than this. It was a skyscraper, known as the Tower of Babel. Eulalie owned the underground city. Because of this characteristic, there were more adventurers gathered here than in any other city or country. The underground city was the source of the fierce monsters scattered across the whole continent. It was the only place in the world that could produce a species known as monsters. Before the gods came, people who had not received the grace of the gods had not suppressed the underground maze, and the monsters from the underground city could invade the surface unscrupulously. Later, even with the help of the grace of the gods, people were able to suppress the underground city in this era, but the monsters that had invaded the surface had not been eliminated. Therefore, the monsters that had invaded the surface reproduced on the surface and gave birth to offspring, so there were traces of monsters all over the world except the underground city. In order to prevent the same thing from happening, Eulalie's people built the Tower of Babel and covered the entrance of the underground city as a cover to prevent monsters from invading the surface. Under such circumstances, if Aurélie's adventurers wanted to explore the dungeon, they would have to enter the Tower of Babel. Since the Tower of Babel was in the center of Eulalie, and Eulalie had 8 streets radiating from the center, the Tower of Babel naturally converged the entrances and exits of the 8 streets of Eulalie. Therefore, no matter which street they took, they would eventually reach the Tower of Babel. To be precise, they arrived at the central square where the 8 main streets gathered around the Tower of Babel. At this time, Noah was in the central square, holding a book in his hand. He was walking towards the Tower of Babel while reading it silently. It was a book that recorded all sorts of information about the dungeon. As a newcomer to the dungeon, the guild would usually assign a staff member to be the newcomer's consultant and provide all sorts of help for the exploration of the dungeon. However, because of the sudden appearance of Loki, although Hasti had helped Noah with the procedures, she had forgotten about the consultant. In the morning, when Noah decided to go to the dungeon to have a look, Hasti had also suggested that Noah go to the guild headquarters to find a consultant. Noah felt that it was not necessary. Therefore, after buying a book with information about the dungeon from the bookstore yesterday, Noah went to the Tower of Babel while reading. It was daybreak, and the sun had not completely risen. However, the adventurers from the 8 streets had begun to come here sparsely. They entered the Tower of Babel and went to explore the underground city. Although Noah was reading a book, he could clearly feel that the adventurers around him were pointing and whispering about him. After all, Noah was wanted by Loki's family. The bounty had been spread throughout Eulalia, and many people knew about Noah. Fortunately, the reason for Noah's bounty was not recorded in the bounty. Otherwise, it would not be just a matter of being pointed at by others. After gaining a general understanding of the dungeon, Noah closed the book in his hand. In short, the dungeon doesn't only have one level. There are many levels. The higher the level, the stronger the monsters that come out of the dungeon. Am I right? Of course, the dungeon was not that simple. There were more or less other matters, some of which were very important and would be mentioned in the future. For now, Noah only wanted to see what the dungeon was like. Just as Noah was about to walk to the entrance of the Tower of Babel, Noah's footsteps suddenly stopped in midair. With his excellent sensing ability, Noah could clearly feel it. At this moment, a line of sight fell from the sky and was projected on Noah as if it was looking down on him. Originally, it was just a line of sight that carried a hint of scrutiny like the surrounding people. However, for some reason, the line of sight suddenly trembled and turned into magma that was comparable to that of a volcano. If there was a word to describe it, it would be scorching. It was really scorching. It was so scorching that Noah even had a feeling that the owner of the line of sight would go crazy at any time and completely devour him. Noah did not feel such a scorching and almost thirsty gaze from Mira and Lisanna. Mira and Lisanna also looked at Noah with a burning gaze, but that kind of passion was quite heartwarming. The scorching gaze was not only heartwarming, but it was also enough to make Noah burn. Such a blatant scorching gaze made Noah very uncomfortable. He followed the line of sight and raised his head to look at the towering Tower of Babel. It was projected from the Tower of Babel. However, just as Noah raised his head, the line of sight suddenly disappeared without any warning. At this moment, Noah actually felt a sense of relief, as if he had been liberated from a furnace. However, Noah's brows were knitted tighter and tighter. Who is that? Naturally, no one would answer Noah's question. Noah could only stare at the towering Tower of Babel for a long time before he lowered his head as if he had given up. It seems that I really can't live in peace in this world. After saying this, Noah lifted his feet and walked into the Tower of Babel without looking back. For the time being, Noah did not know that the Tower of Babel in front of him had other functions besides being the cover of the dungeon. One of them was that there were powerful gods with the power of the clan tribe living on the top floor of the tower. That sudden, abnormally scorching gaze came from the top floor of the tall tower that reached the clouds. On the top floor of the Tower of Babel, in a luxurious hall, a goddess suddenly let out a soft groan and sat down on the ground. She lowered her head and trembled all over. Her face was extremely red, and she was gasping for breath. "Your Excellency." At the door of the luxurious room, a burly man looked at the goddess who suddenly sat down on the ground. His firm face changed slightly, and he was about to step forward, but he was stopped. The goddess continued to lower her head and tremble. She struggled to speak in a painful voice. "I'm fine." After saying this, the goddess slowly raised her blushing pretty face. There was no sign of pain on her pretty face. There was only endless joy in his heart. How could? The goddess's voice was full of intoxication. "Just one look, and the goddess clenched her legs tightly and endured the extreme pleasure. Through the window, the goddess looked at the central square in front of the Tower of Babel. There, the man who made the goddess lose her composure had entered the dungeon. In response, the goddess only spoke with a tone that was faintly tinged with madness. "He is definitely mine, definitely." Chapter 837. Since it was an underground city and a maze, it naturally gave people a feeling of complexity and darkness. In fact, the complexity depended on the situation, but it was not necessarily dark. The dungeon was divided into levels. The higher the level, the further it was from the ground, and the stronger the monsters that were born on that level. With a fixed level as the boundary, the topography and nature of the dungeon would be different. When Noah entered the dungeon and arrived at the first level, a maze that looked like a tunnel appeared in front of him. The walls were light blue, and there were no gaps around them. The walls were completely made of rocks, but there was an inexplicable light source that lit up every passage. The adventurers who came from the Tower of Babel walked leisurely into the passages and disappeared from Noah's sight. When entering the dungeon, no matter which level one wanted to reach, one had to walk step by step. Therefore, even the high-level adventurers had to go through the stairs from the first level to the second level, and then from the second level to the third level. They had to keep going down step by step. Therefore, the first level of the dungeon was the safest place. That was not only because the monsters there were the weakest and lowest level, but also because there were many adventurers who went down from the first level. Any monsters would be killed, and there would not be a situation where a large number of monsters would attack at the same time. This was not a good thing for Noah. "If possible, I don't want to find a single monster to test my skills." Noah laughed and shook his head as he said these words that seemed to be said by a veteran gamer. He walked into a passage with few people. Although the topography of the dungeon was not fixed on every level, it would not change its shape suddenly. At least, in the book that Noah bought, there was a map of the first 10 levels of the dungeon. Following the map in his memory, Noah walked towards the entrance to the second level while observing his surroundings. All of a sudden, the wall that Noah was looking at suddenly made a crisp cracking sound, and it slowly cracked open. Noah stopped and looked at the cracked wall. There, a goblin monster was letting out inaudible howls. It was like a chick that had just hatched from an egg. It kept struggling and popping out of the ground. This was the underground city. The dungeon was alive. This was something that everyone knew. Of course, the so-called life didn't mean that the dungeon would attack people on its own or that the terrain of each floor would change from time to time. It meant something else. For example, the underground city would automatically repair itself. If there was a damaged structure, the damaged structure would be restored to its original state in a short while. The monster was born from this living labyrinth. Just like how chicks and birds were hatched, monsters would be born from the maze's walls, floor, ceiling, and even other places. Because of this, no matter how many monsters were defeated, the monsters in the dungeon would not be wiped out. The types of monsters that were born on each floor were fixed. Sometimes, some monsters would climb up from the lower floors or climb down from the upper floors. Basically, the types of monsters that appeared on each floor were fixed, and it was rare for similar situations to occur. Now, Noah was looking at the scene of monsters being born in the dungeon. G.A. The goblin let out an unpleasant cry like a duck that was being strangled. The goblin that crawled out of the wall was like a flea. It landed on all fours on the ground and pounced in Noah's direction. Facing the pouncing goblin, Noah raised his eyebrows and remained motionless. When the goblin was in front of him, he clenched his fist and swung it. The back of his fist landed heavily on the side of the goblin's face. Palm. With a muffled sound, the thin goblin was sent flying and crashed into the wall. Its head tilted, and the light in its eyes dimmed. Palm. Immediately after, the goblin's body rapidly lost its color. With a muffled explosion, it turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared without a trace. Then, a piece of blue crystal-like gravel and a sharp nail fell to the ground. This was the fate of the defeated monsters. The defeated monsters would not leave behind any corpses. They would only leave behind a crystal called a magic stone. It was the core that existed in the monster's body. It was said that the reason why these monsters could move and have life was because of the magic stone in their bodies. This magic stone contained incredible power and could be used to make various magic stone products. There were no electric lights in this world. However, using the power of the magic stone, people could make it into a lamp and make it have the same effect as an electric light. Using human technology to process and use it flexibly in various aspects to create magic stone products, these magic stones were the reason why this seemingly backward era was not at all behind the modern era in terms of convenience. These magic stones were the reason why this era was not at all behind the modern era. For example, the ignition device that had the same function as a gas stove, the freezer that could store food like a refrigerator, and so on were all magic stone products made with magic stones. Therefore, magic stones were regarded as a precious resource. Eulalie exported these magic stone products to other countries, and the guild that managed Eulalie obtained huge benefits. Therefore, adventurers could exchange magic stones obtained in the dungeon for money in the guild. The guild would determine the purchase price according to the size of the magic stone. Of course, the magic stones dropped by the monsters on level 1 would not be large. It could be said that they were pitifully small. As for the fingernails, they were the so-called dropped items. In addition to dropping magic stones, the defeated monsters would sometimes leave behind a part of their original body. It was said that the part of the monster's body was abnormally developed. It had the power to exist independently after losing the magic stone. It could be used as a material to make weapons or armor. Basically, it was more valuable than magic stones. If the defeated monsters would definitely drop magic stones, but the size of the magic stones varied according to the strength of the monster, then dropped items could only be obtained if one was lucky. The first monster that I killed dropped an item? Is this the effect of the world's protection skill? Noah laughed bitterly. Why do I feel like I'm playing a game? By fighting monsters, Noah could gain experience points. Through Hastia's grace, Noah could draw out the possibilities in his body, allowing him to grow and level up. After defeating the monsters, Noah could obtain the dropped items from the monsters. Was this not a game? It was a pity that once he died, he would not be able to revive. The monsters on level 1 are too weak, Noah thought to himself. If I want to train my ability points, it's more efficient to go further down. Noah didn't even pick up the magic stones and fingernail-shaped items. Instead, he headed straight for the passageway leading to the second floor. To Noah, the magic stones and the dropped items could only be exchanged for a pitiful amount of money. He would rather not pick them up. Just like that, Noah followed the map in his memory and walked to the stairs leading to level 2. He entered level 3 through the stairs leading to level 3 and continued to walk downwards. If others knew that a new adventurer on his first day in the dungeon had reached level 3, they would definitely be shocked to death. But Noah wasn't satisfied. He avoided the weak monsters and went to the last level of the dungeon map that was recorded in a book that was sold publicly. Level 10. It was no longer a dull tunnel. The walls were covered with moss, and the ground was covered with short grass. It was like a grassland, and there was a phosphorescent light like the sun. However, it was filled with a thick white fog. Standing at the entrance of this level, Noah gazed ahead. Pa-ka. Pa-ka-pa-ka, many ferocious half-orcs, who were larger than humans and had pig heads and chubby bodies, broke out of the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah laughed. Very good. That's why it's worth training. Chapter 838. Underground City, 9th floor. On one of the paths leading to the 10th floor, a group of people were chatting as they walked forward. It was a small team of 5 people. Although there were only 5 of them, these 5 people were well-known figures in Eulalia and even the adventurers of the entire world. Among them, there were 3 that Noah knew who came to this world yesterday. A pair of Amazon sisters with wheat-colored skin wearing rather revealing clothes. She was a beautiful young girl with a head of shiny golden hair and a pitiful appearance. They were none other than Aze, Tiona, and Tiona of the Loki clan. In addition to Aze's group of 3, the other 2 people were a stark contrast. One was a rather petite homunculus. The other was a very tall elf. Without a doubt, all 5 of them were from Loki's clan. Moreover, they were the well-deserved leaders of Loki's clan. On the way to the 10th floor, Tiona looked bored. Hey, Finn, how long will it take to reach the 18th floor? Safe floor. It was a very rare floor in the underground city that didn't produce monsters. No matter which floor they wanted to reach, they had to walk on the ground. The lower the floor, the more time they would need to spend to reach it. Therefore, when high-level adventurers entered the underground city, they generally needed to stay for at least a day. Sometimes, it wasn't strange to stay for 1 or 2 months. Under such circumstances, the safe floor was very useful. At least, high-level adventurers could not only have a good rest, but also have a place to store their items. They wouldn't have to carry them around all the time. Therefore, many high-level adventurers who aimed at the lower floors would use the safe floor as a stronghold. The 18th floor was the first safe floor in the underground city. How can it be so fast? We just entered the underground city for a while, right? The one that Tiona called Finn was the homunculus. Finn answered patiently after hearing Tiona's words. Even if it's us, we still need to walk for a long time to reach the 18th floor. I say, Tiona, you've been down there so many times. Don't you know this? Tiona said angrily. So, don't keep complaining to the leader. You're annoying. Tiona is annoying. Tiona wrinkled her nose and hugged Aze, who was walking silently beside her. Aze, chat with me. Chat. Aze showed a puzzled and vexed expression. Tiona, don't make things difficult for AIC. The tall and slender elven beauty spoke. You know that Aze isn't the kind of person who's good at chatting. You're just causing trouble for her. What's the matter, Riveria? Tiona complained. Ever since she met that interesting little brother, AIC has been in a daze whenever she's free. She doesn't even bother to talk to me. Hearing this, AIC lowered her head and spoke in a mosquito-like voice. I'm sorry, don't bother with this unreasonable fool, Aze. Tiona sighed. She'll only cause trouble for you. However, AIC has indeed been in a daze ever since she came back yesterday. She even forgot about the morning exercises that she had been doing. That's really strange, Finn said with some interest. In the past, if we ignored A's, she would go into the underground city alone. Today, we invited her over. This is rare. Is this related to the person who forced A's to leave without receiving any favor? Compared to going into the underground city without saying a word, I'm more willing to see you being troubled like an ordinary child, Riveria said. But you can't continue like this, A's. Soon, we'll have to go into the underground city. When that time comes, we might lose many of our companions if you're in a daze. I know. A's replied softly, but she still looked disappointed. I'm really starting to get curious. Finn smiled. What kind of man is he that can make AIC daydream all day long? After saying that, the entrance to the 10th floor appeared in front of them. As soon as they entered the 10th floor, which was completely different from the 9th floor, AIC and the rest suddenly heard a strange sound. It was filled with a thick fog and didn't feel like a gloomy underground passage. Roar. An extremely loud beast-like roar reverberated throughout the entire space. Rumble, along with the resonant roar, the ground began to tremble slightly. Immediately after, the whistling, roaring, and vibrating sounds all mixed together, fluctuating like an echo in this space filled with dense fog. Tiona was energized as though she had finally encountered something interesting in her boredom. What's that sound? Don't shout. Idiot. Tiona glared at Tiona and turned to Finn. Leader, is there a battle ahead? It should be. Finn nodded. But as far as the battle is concerned, this movement is a bit too much. Should we go and take a look? Riveria seemed to be a little concerned. I feel that the ground is shaking very frequently, as if, it's like there's an army of giant monsters charging at us, right? Finn showed a smile that matched his appearance. Very well, I smell something unusual. My entire index finger is shaking. If we don't go and take a look, we won't have the face to call ourselves adventurers. After that, Finn took the lead and walked in the direction of the sound. As the sound got closer and closer, about 10 minutes later, the group of Iraqis, led by Finn, stopped and looked ahead, falling into a state of astonishment. Roar. Amidst the chaotic roars, a group of huge, fat half-orcs, who were 2 to 3 meters tall, held clubs in their hands. There were at least a few hundred of them, and they charged toward the center with ferocious expressions. There, a figure was surrounded by hundreds of orcs, but he was so calm as though he was taking a stroll. Sometimes, he stepped to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the back, sometimes to the front, 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 sometimes to the back, and sometimes to the back, bending down, and dodging the attacks of the sticks in extremely thrilling angles. It was such a leisurely stroll that the hundreds of gigantic orcs couldn't touch a single strand of hair. As a result, the orcs howled repeatedly, their howls filled with ferocity and violence. That scene was enough to make everyone's eyeballs pop out. It didn't look like a battle at all, it looked more like a performance. Yes. A performance. That person who was surrounded by orcs was showing amazing skills that ordinary people couldn't reach. From time to time, he would take the opportunity to punch the stomach of the attacking half-orc, sending the huge monster flying. Sometimes, he would twist his body to dodge, letting the whistling sticks graze his skin and pass by in thrilling fashion. Sometimes, he would move slightly, and his entire body was like a soft cloud, getting into a position where the orcs couldn't attack at all. Sometimes, he would charge left and right, shaking the clumsy orcs into dizziness with amazing speed. Some even knocked into each other and fell down powerlessly. If this wasn't a performance, then what was? You're lying, right? Tyagni cried out in alarm. Facing hundreds of orcs, even if they are only equivalent to LV-1 monsters, he can still play with them like this. Could it be that he is a LV-5 adventurer? Where would a LV-5 adventurer have the time to play with orcs here? Riveria frowned. Who is that person? AIC, on the other hand, stared at the figure. Suddenly, her eyes widened and ripples appeared in her eyes. It's him, You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.